The scene began with a man's emotionless declaration. "Let's get a divorce," he said, his voice as cold and sharp as ice, piercing the air as he looked down at the girl kneeling on the floor. "You know I have feelings for Riddy," he continued. The girl trembled, tears streaming down her face. She looked at the man before her, the words catching in her throat. "I know." A painful smile stretched across her lips, the tears still falling. "I know," she thought, the realization a bitter pill. His image flashed in her mind. "Duke Bien," she thought bitterly, "you heartless bastard." A wave of anguish washed over her. "Ever since our honeymoon," she recalled, "he's been unfaithful. He frequents those degenerate establishments, whiling away his time with women in bars and casinos." Her thoughts grew darker. Meanwhile, someone who loves him has shed countless tears for such a despicable man. She wept, consumed by pain and humiliation, unsure how to face this reality. She clenched her hands, seeking a sliver of solace. "Be strong," she told herself. "Don't break down." The scene shifted, a paper clutched in her hand. "Now," she thought, "I'm getting a divorce." She threw the paper to the ground, her voice soft. "Fine." Looking down at the document, she spoke with newfound resolve. "If you want a divorce, then be prepared to provide proper alimony." She stood up, catching him off guard. A knowing smile played on her lips. The compliant Alicia de Bien is dead, she thought. Bien, witnessing this transformation, was taken aback. She'd agreed to the divorce so readily, but his thoughts were interrupted by a pragmatic decision. Best to just give her some money and end this. He scratched his head in annoyance. "How much do you want?" Alicia's anger flared, grabbing him by the collar. "I gave everything to this family," she cried. "You should at least give me a third of your assets." A sinister smile spread across her face. "I won't be fooled again," she thought. Bien stammered, Alicia released her grip. With a confident smile, she declared, "I'm taking back my life." The scene transitioned to a building shimmering under the warm sun. Alicia stood by the window, bathed in the morning light. She remained still for a long moment. Looking over the hall, a pensive expression crossed her features. Her gaze softened, memories surfacing. "My most cherished memory here," she mused, "is of Bien and I laughing together, me laughing freely and innocently." The image shattered. "These memories must be completely erased," she resolved. The scene shifted again, Alicia seated by the window, listening to the birdsong. A maid knocked softly. "Come in," Alicia said. The maid approached cautiously, a worried expression on her face. "Madam," she began. Alicia observed her. "This is the maid I brought with me when I married," she thought, "and the only person in this house I can trust and love." "What is it, Nettie?" she asked. Nettie lowered her head. "Madam," she whispered. Tears welled in Nettie's eyes, her voice trembling. "There's something I want to say." Alicia offered a bitter smile. "For 4 years, I've lived in hell here, a place where no one would take my side. If it weren't for Nettie, I don't know what I would have done." "Go on, Nettie," she encouraged. "I heard you're preparing for a divorce," Nettie said hesitantly. "That's right," Alicia confirmed. "I've already signed the papers." Nettie's voice was laced with panic. "Are you leaving this place?" "Yes," Alicia replied. Tears streaming down her face, Nettie asked, "Can I go with you?" Alicia's expression grew somber. She remained silent, lost in thought. Turning towards the window, she spoke softly. "It's your choice. I can't force you to follow me unconditionally." Before she could finish, Nettie cried out, "I'll go with you. No one is more important than you, madam." Nettie sobbed. Touched by her sincerity, Alicia smiled and patted her head. "Thank you, Nettie. Then let's leave together." She added, "Stop calling me madam." "Then what should I call you?" Nettie asked. Alicia smiled, her gaze fixed on the sunlight. "You should call me Miss now." Time passed, the scene changing to midday. A man sat before Alicia, cheerfully presenting a folder. "I've come to assist you with the division of assets, as per the Duke's instructions." Alicia accepted the folder, silently reviewing its contents. She set the folder down. "Is this truly 1/3?" she asked. "Yes," the man replied confidently. "Is there a problem?" Alicia's expression was laced with suspicion. "How did you arrive at this figure?" The man nervously shuffled through the papers. 1/3 of the family's bank deposits in cash. "You say 1/3? Alicia now understood. She smiled, thinking 30% of that money isn't nearly enough. He's playing tricks again. Does he think I'm a fool? Gesturing towards the document, she continued, "I recall requesting 30% of the assets from the Duke. I'm certain he instructed you to make this offer." Her gaze sharpened. "Gold jewels, and all the valuables within this house are also considered assets, correct? The man stammered. Those items are difficult to appraise. Alicia suddenly patted the man on the shoulder. Don't worry. A sly smile spread across her face. I've been assessing and appraising those assets for years. The man was speechless. Gold, jewels, crops, everything of value within this mansion. I estimate them to be 1/3 of the assets. You can do the math yourself. The man broke out in a cold sweat. But if you include all of that, it's far too much. Honestly, the amount we've offered is enough to live on. Alicia's voice turned cold. Listen carefully, lawyer. A wicked smile played on her lips. How I spend my money is none of your concern. The lawyer was too intimidated to speak. She continued, and the land near the mines. I believe I must have forgotten to include that as well. She patted the terrified lawyer's shoulder again. As she walked away, the lawyer called out, I'll discuss this with the Duke. Alicia scoffed. Do you really need to? The scene shifted to a bedroom at night. Alicia, a pensive expression on her face, smiled in the darkness like a predator. He must be wondering how the compliant Alicia knows all of this. She mused. She looked at the wine glass in her hand. Because I have memories that no one else knows. She drained the glass in one gulp. One day, I woke up here with vivid memories of my past life. She thought, looking at the red wine with satisfaction. The scene changed to the next morning. Alicia opened her eyes, staring at the ceiling. She slowly got out of bed, rubbing her tired shoulders, bearing the weight of her life. She crossed the room, standing before the window. Looking out, a thoughtful expression crossed her face. Finally, the day has come, she thought, the day I receive my compensation. A bright smile bloomed on her face. The scene shifted to a grand, imposing building, people chattering excitedly within. Someone placed a stack of money on the table. This is the amount you requested, madam. Alicia's smile turned sinister. Taking the money, she asked. Must have been painful, wasn't it? She thought, what goes around comes around, you scum. Alicia left the building, money in hand. Nettie turned to her. Miss, where are you going? Alicia smiled. To spend this money, of course. She turned and walked away. Nettie stared after her, a large question mark appearing above her head. The scene changed to a shop in the city. Someone entered, the shopkeeper greeting them warmly. Welcome, Mississippi. How may I help you? Alicia smiled. I'm here to buy a mansion. What kind of mansion are you looking for? The shopkeeper asked politely. Show me what you have first. Alicia replied. They aren't too expensive, miss. The shopkeeper encouraged. No problem, Alicia said, so let's see what you have. As she flipped through the booklet showcasing the mansions, she thought that this place wasn't worth staying in any longer. Seeing her turning the pages, the landlady said excitedly, I'd like to introduce you to this place. She then handed over another booklet, asking, What do you think of this house? Pointing to a specific house, she continued, Would this suit you? Alicia responded, thinking, the color of the house is beautiful, but 12 Obituary Street is a bit far from the carriage station, isn't it? She spoke aloud, her mind racing. I know that if the economy develops, public transportation will develop as well. Do you use the public carriage? The landlady inquired. Alicia replied, No, it's just a matter of location. That's what I mean. Having said this, Alicia saw something that gave her pause. Looking at the people outside, she thought, currently, the kingdom's public carriages are mainly used by merchants and doctors, but soon the use of public carriages by ordinary citizens will also increase. However, before she could finish her thought, Alicia noticed something that made her frown. It was the paper in her hand, which read, Mortgage of $1 billion. A mortgage of $1 billion. Her inner fury ignited, her expression burning. Shouldn't it be half the selling price? Seeing her anger, Nettie was too frightened to speak. The landlady smiled inwardly, thinking, I just want to sell it to you. Alicia, fuming, flipped to another house and declared brightly, No, I'll choose this one. The landlady gasped, That house. But it won't be cheap, as it's close to the central station. Of course the price is high, Alicia thought, smiling at the landlady. Yes, please contact the homeowner and let me know as soon as possible. Handing the booklet back, she thought, I don't want a pretty house right now. I want a house that will appreciate in value in the future, even if it's undervalued now, just like gold. She smiled confidently. The scene shifted to a luxurious and spacious mansion. Someone gave a thumbs up, exclaiming, Amazing. It was Nettie enthusiastically praising Alicia. Miss, you were so amazing just now. I didn't know you could be so cool when analyzing a house purchase. Alicia blushed, replying, It's nothing. She thought, in my past life, I was an accountant for a large company. How could such a small calculation be difficult for me? Before she could finish her thought, thought. A girl in the distance caught her attention. Observing the girl's simple clothing, she thought, I could be like that too, even though I lived as a duchess. I didn't own any assets. She's dressed so simply. She mused, will things be different from now on? Her expression darkened. She called out to Nettie. Yes, miss. Nettie replied cheerfully, full of anticipation. Alicia said, let's go shopping. Nettie asked, shopping? Alicia grabbed Nettie's arm, pulling her along. You'll get used to it. Come on. Nettie exclaimed in surprise. Is this okay? Are you really Miss Alicia? Alicia laughed. Forget the old me. That person is dead. She smiled brilliantly, thinking, I'll show you what it means to spend money like water. The scene changed to a shop where the enthusiastic shopkeeper greeted them. Welcome, Duchess. You know me? Alicia asked, puzzled. The shopkeeper replied, of course, Duchess Bean. You're quite famous. Alicia sighed. That's why I've always kept my distance from everyone. But not anymore. I like to see some dresses, she told the shopkeeper. What kind would you like to see? The shopkeeper asked. Alicia suggested, from here to here, bring them all out. Certainly, the shopkeeper replied cheerfully. Once all the dresses were displayed, Alicia picked one up and asked Nettie, what do you think? Nettie thought for a moment, then, with tears in her eyes, said, they're all beautiful, miss, and so are you. Alicia smiled and asked, shall we buy them all then? The shopkeeper exclaimed, wonderful, madam. Leading Alicia to the fitting room, the shopkeeper said cheerfully, let me take your measurements, madam. Moments later, the sight of the shopkeeper bustling about inside left Nettie speechless with amazement. Finally, after a while, the curtain drew back. Alicia, clad in her new attire, looked radiant, exuding the air of a true noblewoman. Nettie was so moved by the sight that she almost burst into tears. Alicia, blushing, was speechless for a moment. Then, turning to the shopkeeper, she said, please choose 10 outfits for this young lady as well. Nettie was stunned into silence. The shopkeeper replied, wonderful, madam. Alicia smiled. From now on, you don't need to call me madam. Why? The shopkeeper asked, confused. Alicia gestured to her ring finger. I've already signed the divorce papers. She smiled brilliantly. From now on, I am Alicia de Bien. Once everything was chosen, it was all carefully packaged. Alicia looked up at the shopkeeper and asked, how much is all of this? 40 million dinot. Mississippi, shall I send the bill to your house? The shopkeeper replied. Alicia wrote a check. No need. I'll pay the full amount with this bank draft. She smiled as she handed the draft to the shopkeeper. As they finally left the shop, the shopkeeper called out warmly, thank you for your patronage. I hope to see you again soon. Not long after, Alicia received correspondence from the homeowner, offering to sell the house. She immediately signed the contract with the homeowner. She also promised Nettie that she wanted to start a new life. The scene shifted to Duke Bean's mansion. A red-haired woman strode down the hallway. After walking for a while, she stopped in front of a door. Hearing the footsteps, Alicia opened the door, thinking, the divorce papers arrived so quickly, but I've already signed them. However, before she could finish her thought, Alicia saw the woman, her expression turning thoughtful. The red-haired woman sneered at Alicia. Now look who it is. She continued in a mocking tone. I never thought I'd see you in the Duke's house. It was Riddy Layton. Recognizing the brazen woman, Alicia thought, this woman is my husband's mistress. That was 2 years ago, and it was the reason I decided to get a divorce. She mused, she's already acting as if this is her house. Not wanting to cause trouble, she chose to avoid the venomous woman. Seeing this, Riddy scoffed. Hey, I know you signed the divorce papers. Do you think you're still a duchess? Hearing this, Alicia stopped. Turning around, she asked thoughtfully, so what? Riddy sneered. You think you can just ignore me and walk away? Alicia replied calmly, yes, I'm divorced. Seeing that she had achieved her goal, Riddy laughed triumphantly. Alicia sighed, then asked with a smile, so why don't you eat and live with that scum? Why come here to bother me? Riddy shrieked, scum? How dare you call the Duke that? Alicia couldn't help but laugh. Looking at Riddy as if she were looking at a naive child, she said, even if it started with affection, do you think he'll be faithful to you? Riddy trembled with rage. Are you jealous of me? So you're slandering him before you leave? Alicia's expression turned serious. This isn't slander, it's a warning. She continued with a smile. From now on, this is no longer my concern. I wish you happiness, Duchess. She gave a mocking glance at the furious Riddy and walked away, satisfied, thinking, I no longer have any connection to him. The scene changed to a shop on the street. Nettie was happily trying on a new dress and Alicia watched with a smile. Nettie turned to Alicia and asked, "Miss, what do you think?" "Beautiful," Alicia replied. Nettie said excitedly, "I love it. I never thought I'd be able to try on a dress like this. Shall I try one on too?" Alicia asked. Nettie nodded enthusiastically. Yes. After a while, Alicia emerged in her new outfit, looking elegant and noble. The surrounding people exclaimed, "Perfect." Looking at herself in the mirror, Alicia mused, "It must be the shopkeeper's excellent skills." She murmured thoughtfully, "It feels like something is missing." She turned to the shopkeeper, asking with a brilliant smile, "Excuse me, could you recommend a jewelry store nearby?" The scene shifted to a jewelry store. The shopkeeper bowed, welcoming Alicia and Nettie into the store. Alicia returned the greeting with a warm smile. "Welcome," the shopkeeper greeted. Alicia approached. "May I look at some jewelry?" she inquired. "Of course, right this way," the shopkeeper replied, gesturing her forward. Nettie leaned in close. "How much jewelry are you planning to buy?" she whispered. Alicia smiled. "I can do as I please, so I'll buy as much as I want." She pointed to a necklace and other jewels displayed beneath the counter. "Please bring these out for me to see," she told the shopkeeper. Necklaces, diamonds, rings, and bracelets were brought out one after another. Watching them being neatly arranged on the table, the shopkeeper asked, "Are you really planning to buy all of these?" "Yes," Alicia said thoughtfully, "but I'd like to see a few other things as well." As she finished speaking, her eyes suddenly lit up, catching sight of something. It was a necklace that shimmered with an exceptional brilliance amongst the other jewels. Alicia turned to the shopkeeper. "That one," she declared. An employee hurried over, picking up a necklace. "This one?" he asked. Alicia pointed to the one beside it. "No, the other one." Before she could finish her sentence, someone else reached out and picked up the necklace. "I'll take this," a voice said. It was someone wearing a dark hat. Seeing the necklace she had chosen taken, Alicia's mind raced. "Wait a minute." She stood there flustered, unable to speak. The person, cloaked in a dark cape, turned, revealing golden hair, and looked at Alicia thoughtfully. Flustered, Alicia found her voice. "Excuse me, but I chose that one first." The person chuckled lightly. "Let's see. As far as I'm aware." They continued, fingering the necklace. "I believe I was the first to select it." "No, you're mistaken," Alicia said, flustered, thinking, how could someone be so rude? The golden hair man sighed. "How am I mistaken?" They both smiled, but there was an underlying tension in their expressions, a spark seeming to flash between them. After a moment, the shopkeeper spoke up, flustered. "In any case, this customer chose it first, so you'll have to discuss it with him," he said, gesturing towards the golden-haired man. Nettie and Alicia stared blankly for a moment. The golden-haired man said cheerfully, "See, even the shopkeeper agrees with me." Having witnessed the whole exchange, Alicia thought angrily, so he's a regular here. But since the shopkeeper said so, I can't cause a scene. The shopkeeper looked hesitantly at Alicia. "Then I'll sell it to that customer," he said. Alicia sighed. "Very well. Please give me the items I've already paid for." The shopkeeper quickly wrapped the items Alicia had chosen and handed them to her. After receiving them, Alicia glanced at the golden-haired man. She stood quietly for a moment, a thoughtful expression on her face. The golden-haired man smiled. Alicia thought furiously, that insolent man. I hope I never see him again. The scene shifted to a grand mansion that evening. "What are you doing back here?" A voice roared angrily. He glared at Alicia, who stood submissively before him. "You ugly thing. This family doesn't need a freakish daughter like you." He continued to glare at her contemptuously. Alicia gave a small, cold smile. "Doesn't need." Seeing his daughter's expression, the Duke trembled with even more fury. "As you said, I've already left this house," Alicia continued. "Why do you think I came back?" She took a sip of tea. "Since I've gone through such a significant event like a divorce, isn't it natural to visit my parents?" she added. The Duke slammed his hand on the table. "You're a disgrace to this family. How dare you do such a thing?" he shouted. Alicia smiled. "Don't worry about what I do. I could take care of myself. Just promise me one thing." The Duke was shaking with rage, but he couldn't retort. Behind him, a man stood silently, watching Alicia. He stood there with a bewildered expression. Alicia shook her head inwardly. "You don't need to take my side, Lubin. Our father-daughter relationship isn't particularly close anyway. Rather than feigning concern, it's better not to care." Looking at the Duke, Alicia continued, "No matter what happens in the future, don't come looking for me." The Duke slapped her hard across the face. Alicia was utterly shocked, unable to react. "Get out," the Duke roared, "and never show your face in front of me again." Alicia was so stunned she could barely believe what had happened. "The only reason I came here," she thought, was to see if his attitude would change after learning about the massive alimony I received. Seeing her objective achieved without any effort, Alicia smiled triumphantly. Standing up, she said, "Yes, thank you, Father. I'll be going now." Walking away, she thought, "Thank you for helping me sever this tie." Seeing Alicia leave, Nettie hurried over and called out, "Mississippi." However, before she could finish speaking, Nettie noticed the red mark on Alicia's cheek and gasped. "Miss, what happened to your cheek? Are you all right?" Alicia gave a gentle smile. "I'm fine, but I no longer have a family." Nettie suddenly burst into tears. "Miss," she sobbed, hugging Alicia. Alicia comforted her. "It's all right because I still have you." "I'll do my best, miss," Nettie said between sobs. "Good," Alicia said cheerfully. "Let's go decorate our new home." "Okay," Nettie replied happily. The scene shifted to a carriage traveling through the night. Looking out the window, Alicia thought, "This is nothing. If I crumble now, I won't be able to withstand greater challenges later." The scene changed to a luxurious and imposing building. A dress billowed in the wind. Holding the dress, Nettie turned to Alicia. "Miss, how about this one?" Alicia smiled. "It's beautiful. You have a good eye. If you need anything else, just let me know." Alicia continued, "Let's go shopping together another day." Nettie laughed, holding up the dress. "I love it. It's like a dream." Lying in the soft bed, Alicia smiled. "I feel the same way. I keep asking myself, how can I be living like this?" She murmured thoughtfully, "Is there anything else I need to buy?" As she spoke, the image of the necklace flashed in her mind. Alicia suddenly sat up, startling Nettie. She sighed in disappointment. That necklace was truly beautiful. "That necklace?" Nettie asked, puzzled. "Just that one." Alicia realized something. "That's right. I just need to find a goldsmith." Time passed, and the scene shifted to the next morning. Alicia gave $300,000 to 10 jewelry stores and learned the name of the goldsmith who made the necklace, Hale Benson. After consulting a map, she finally arrived at the address, but it was a dark, narrow alley filled with overflowing bins. They walked through the alley, searching for the goldsmith. Finally, they came to a door, and Alicia knocked. Looking around, Alicia thought, puzzled, a craftsman? Why would a goldsmith live in a place like this? "Excuse me," she called out hesitantly. "Does anyone named Hale live here?" Before she could finish her sentence, she saw someone sitting in a chair, writing. "There's no one here by that name," the person said. They continued their search, going door to door throughout the alley. Later, they stood before another door. As Alicia knocked, the person inside opened it. She thought anxiously, "This is the last workshop. Please let it be him." The door was opened by a middle-aged man with the intelligent face of a master craftsman. "Does someone named Hale live here?" Alicia asked anxiously. "I am Hale." Hale said, "What can I do for you?" The scene shifted to the goldsmith's workshop. The room was simple, with only candles and crumpled pieces of paper tossed in a corner. Nettie and Alicia sat opposite Hale. He studied them thoughtfully, a serious expression on his face. Looking at the anxious Alicia, he thought, "Even though she knows my name, I should be wary of strangers." Sensing the tension, Alicia spoke. "I'd like to ask you for a favor. I came to find you specifically after seeing a piece of jewelry you crafted. Was it a private commission?" Hale asked. "You could say that," Alicia replied. "I've never taken private orders," he said thoughtfully. "What kind of piece are you looking for?" Alicia smiled and pointed to her neck, a delighted expression on her face. "A necklace," she said. "A delicate silver chain." She continued, "with a large diamond in the center that can tell time." Hale looked down at his papers. "And the deadline?" he asked thoughtfully. "There's no deadline," Alicia replied. "Please take your time and make it exquisite." "All right," Hale said, writing on the paper. "I'll make it as you've requested." Alicia smiled and asked, "And what would the cost be?" Hale put down his paper and said thoughtfully, "The standard fee is $200,000. I can only make about 10 pieces a month." "Only $200,000? Alicia said, surprised. "It takes at least 3 days to make a ring or a necklace." She thought, puzzled. Even working continuously, his monthly income is only $2 million. That's far too little for the hours worked. "Can't you charge more?" she asked. "If I did that, I'd lose business and starve," Hale replied, holding his head. He continued, "There are many other craftsmen who also work for $200,000. He turned and added, "I've looked everywhere, but no one offers more than $200,000. If you offer a higher wage, no one will accept it." Unbelievable, Alicia thought, shocked. "The finished product sells for 10 times that price." The distributors are exploiting the goldsmiths, forming alliances for their own benefit. They're truly wicked. Furious, she slammed her hand on the table. I'll pay you 5 times that amount, she declared. What? Hale exclaimed in surprise. Not just this once, Alicia continued, extending her hand. I want you to continue making jewelry for me from now on, she said, smiling. Hale was so shocked. He seemed dazed. He took her hand and asked, bewildered, why 5 times the price? Alicia squeezed his hand. Because your work is precious. Never having been appreciated like this before, Hale stared blankly for a moment, deeply touched by her words. The scene shifted back to Alicia's mansion. Alicia sat alone, lost in thought, a serious expression on her face. There must be a way to disrupt these businesses, she thought. In the jewelry industry, raw materials are important, but the craftsman's skill is the key. At first, they're just unrefined stones without beauty. If I hire all the goldsmiths, those capitalists won't be able to exploit them anymore. I'll become the monopolist, she murmured. She tapped her fingers on the table, her eyes gleaming with purpose. I'm going to try this. Even if it's expensive, I have enough funds. Resolute, she abruptly stood up. Walking away from the table, she picked up her bag, thinking, I'm going to try this. I won't do what others tell me to do. I'm going to do what I want to do. She walked with newfound authority. Nettie watched her, dumbfounded and confused. Miss, she finally stammered. Where are you going? Alicia turned and smiled. To do something interesting. But miss, you haven't had breakfast yet, Nettie exclaimed. The scene shifted back to the dark and desolate alley. Alicia stood in front of a house and knocked. Hale slowly opened the door. Who is it? Hello, Alicia said cheerfully. Seeing her cheerful demeanor, Hale asked in surprise, have you already found the gemstones? I need your help, Alicia interrupted. I want to meet the goldsmiths of the capital. Hale was silent for a moment. A week later, all the goldsmiths Alicia had requested to see were gathered together. Alicia smiled. Thank you all for coming. Gesturing towards Hale, she continued. You may have heard from Mr. Benson, but I wanted to meet all of you personally. The goldsmiths looked nervously at each other, remaining silent. Alicia, still smiling, continued. If you work for me, I'll pay you $3 million. But I have 3 requirements. If you perform exceptionally well, your wages will be 5 times your current earnings. The goldsmiths looked at each other in astonishment. Can this be true? They whispered amongst themselves. I don't know. One said, let's hear what she has to say. Of course, Alicia replied cheerfully. Depending on individual performance, we can negotiate fees and bonuses. Can you really do that? Someone asked. Certainly, Alicia said with a smile. I will repair all the cracks and holes in the workshop and provide you with new tools. Tears welled up in the goldsmith's eyes. Thank you, miss, they stammered, overwhelmed with emotion. We've never been treated like this. We'll work hard. Alicia turned to Hale, a triumphant smile on her face. I'm simply giving your talent the respect it deserves, she said. I'd like you all to sign an exclusive contract with me for the next 3 years. The scene shifted to a grand building. Someone paced back and forth outside a room. Come in, a voice called out. Another person approached and said, Duke, Miss Alicia de Bien has arrived. The newcomer asked respectfully, have they arrived? The Duke asked. No, sir, the butler replied. They're still outside. The Duke was in fact Lemuser. If only I were a tycoon now, he mused. Holding a letter, he asked thoughtfully, Miss Alicia de Bien? Yes, sir. Not the Duchess de Bien, the butler replied. Is that so? Lemuser said. I heard it was. He slit open the envelope with a knife and began to read, a contemplative expression on his face. It's a business proposal, he said. The butler stepped closer and took the letter, asking, a business proposal? Yes, Lemuser replied. She's looking for a gemstone supplier, and the 3-year price she's offering is quite reasonable. The butler murmured as he read the letter, not clothing or perfume. Looking at Lemuser, he asked, Sir, are you interested in the jewelry business? Lemuser smiled, thinking I should meet her. The scene shifted to Alicia's mansion. Holding a letter, Alicia exclaimed excitedly, Finally, success. What is it, miss? Nettie asked curiously. Before she could finish, Alicia reached out and wiped her mouth. Nettie, you should wipe your mouth before speaking, she said cheerfully. Nettie blushed. I can wipe my own mouth, Mississippi. Alicia held up the letter. I receive a reply from Duke Lemuser. He's the biggest investor in the mining industry, and he wants to meet me. Nettie beamed. Mrs. Hard work has finally paid off. That's wonderful. Will you go and meet him, miss? She asked excitedly. I'd like to, Alicia said thoughtfully, but in 3 days. He requested it. Where will you meet? Nettie asked. I'll go to Lemuser's place. Alicia replied cheerfully. He requested it. Standing up, she added, I've finally received a reply, so I have to go out for a bit. I'll be back. Seeing Nettie curiously ask where she was going since the meeting was still 3 days away, Alicia, flipping through some dresses, said she needed to do some market research. Nettie asked, puzzled, what she meant by market research. Time flew by, and it was soon afternoon. Alicia was now in a shop, telling the clerk she wanted to look at watches. The scene shifted to the glittering watches displayed in a glass counter. Looking at them, she thought to herself that she had to pretend to shop normally, and then she pointed to some jeweled bracelets next to the watches. Looking at the glittering bracelets embedded with gems, she mused, mainly necklaces, then rings. Then Alicia asked the clerk, pointing at a watch, This is a nice watch, isn't it? Do other people come here to buy watches? Not just me. The clerk replied, They don't sell very well, though. Looking at the watch, the clerk continued, Watches aren't our main product. Alicia, looking at the watch, said, Is that so? The clerk cheerfully replied, That's right, diamond necklaces are still the mainstream. Older ladies really like them. Hearing this, Alicia thought, This is useful information. Just then, someone entered the shop, cheerfully asked the clerk if they had any new gemstones. Yes, you've come at just the right time, the clerk replied brightly. Observing the interaction, Alicia thought to herself that, just as the shop owner had said, the clientele here were mainly women over 40. She then said to the clerk, Could I take a look at the one you showed me earlier? The scene shifted to outside, where Alicia walked along, carrying her newly purchased bag. With a thoughtful expression, she mused, The demographic interested in buying gemstones seems to be between 40 and 50. Recalling the scene in the shop, she pondered, The most popular type is diamonds, followed by sapphires, and lastly rubies. She then pulled out a notebook and wrote, thinking the best-selling jewelry items are necklaces, rings, bracelets, and then watches. She then smiled confidently, thinking, as long as I can find a good location to open a shop, I'll be set. Looking up at the sky, she thought, currently jewelry stores all sell goods distributed by import companies, which leads to higher prices. Then, with a confident expression, she thought to herself, I won't need distributors, so I can make a much larger profit. The scene shifted to Alicia's mansion. Nettie walked in slowly, carrying a tea tray. Alicia was engrossed in writing something. Seeing this, Nettie approached and asked, Miss, what are you writing? Alicia replied, I did some market research, and I'm making plans for my business venture. Nettie looked down at the paper and asked, Miss, are you making a business plan? Then, her eyes sparkling, she said happily, The more I look at it, the more feasible it seems, Mississippi. Hearing this, Alicia smiled confidently. Time flew by, and it was now nighttime. A blonde-haired young woman was reading when someone approached and gave her a small gift. Seeing this, the young woman said happily, Brother. This brother was the man in the black cloak from the jewelry store. Accepting the gift, she asked in surprise, What's this? It's a birthday present, the man replied. Oh my goodness, it's already here, the young woman said happily. As she opened the gift, she saw that it was indeed a necklace, the very one Alicia had desired. With a delighted expression, she continued, This is the first time I've seen such a beautiful necklace. The cut is so exquisite. Her brother replied with a smile, I went through quite a bit of trouble to get this necklace. The young woman asked, Trouble? What do you mean? He said, Yes, trouble. A young lady wanted to buy it at the same time as me, and I had to use my charms to persuade her to let me have it. Hearing this, the young woman asked skeptically, Charms? Looking at her brother, she sighed, thinking to herself, That's nonsense. Seeing his sister's disbelief, the brother said with a laugh, No girl can resist my charms. The scene shifted to outside the mansion. Inside the mansion, the sister thought, puzzled, but he really is kind and handsome, isn't he? Looking at her brother, she worried, although a bit strange sometimes. Thinking this, she asked anxiously, Were people mean to you? Her brother smiled confidently and said, No, I coerced the competition. The sister looked down at the necklace and said, It must have been hard to get it then. She then asked, Was it difficult to acquire? What kind of person was that girl? Her brother was silent for a long moment. Then he recalled Alicia's image in the jewelry store and the way she looked walking out. He also remembered her frustrated expression at not getting the necklace. He said to his sister with a smile, Like a squirrel. A squirrel? His sister asked, bringing him back to the present. After a moment, he changed the subject. Never mind that. How have you been lately? He asked. His sister replied with a smile, I've been well. She thought to herself, that girl must have been beautiful for my brother to react that way. However, she then placed her hand on the table and said, a lot has happened in the kingdom while you were away. She picked up a newspaper and said, the Duke and Duchess de Bien have divorced. The brother picked up the newspaper, thinking, I can't believe that legendary ducal family actually got divorced. However, he tossed the paper onto a chair, smiling and saying, enough about that news. I want to hear about what my sister has been up to. The scene shifted to another legendary mansion. Duke Lemuser's butler cheerfully announced, we've arrived, Mississippi. Hearing this, someone stepped down from the carriage. It was Alicia. A moment later, she and Duke Lemuser's butler entered the mansion. Before them were the welcoming doors of the castle. The scene transitioned to the interior as they stepped inside. The butler led her to a door and said, it's here. Then he opened the door and announced, Your Grace, you have a visitor. Duke Lemuser smiled and said, it's been a while, Habern. I received your letter. Alicia curtsied and replied cheerfully, it's a pleasure to meet you in this way, Your Grace. She thought to herself, is he considering calling me Lady Habern? After taking a seat, Duke Lemuser said, I've been really looking forward to meeting you, Alicia. She replied, thank you for inviting me. Alicia took out a document and said, I'd like to show you the trade plan I've drafted. Duke Lemuser accepted the document, smiling and saying, oh, you've already prepared it. Alicia replied with a smile, I thought it would be better to show you the entire plan from the start, rather than piecemeal. Duke Lemuser flipped through the document and said, the table of contents is well organized. Hearing this, Alicia smiled inwardly, thinking, my past life experience of writing countless reports as an accountant is really coming in handy. Duke Lemuser asked thoughtfully, what about the craftsman? Do you have enough manpower to process the gemstones? Alicia replied with a smile, of course. I've even calculated the craftsman's working hours and the average production time for jewelry. I plan to pay them an hourly wage. Please take a look. Duke Lemuser said, if this is your first time preparing a business plan, you're remarkably thorough. Alicia replied, thank you. Then she took out another document, saying, these are the contract terms I'd like to propose. She continued, I've also specified the type and quantity of raw stones, as well as the delivery time. Duke Lemuser listened intently, reading the document. Seeing him like this, Alicia was too nervous to speak. Duke Lemuser finally asked, when will you start your business? Alicia replied, once the government approves the plan, I'll immediately recruit people. We should be ready within a few weeks. Duke Lemuser was silent for a long moment. Alicia asked anxiously, Your Grace, do you have any concerns about the contract terms? The scene abruptly shifted to Duke Bien's mansion. A middle-aged woman sat in a chair and said to Ricky, you've been through a lot. Ricky sipped his tea thoughtfully and said, nothing good has happened yet. She recalled the last time she directly confronted Alicia. Then she thought about how Alicia had achieved her goal, the triumphant air about her as she turned to leave. She frowned, thinking being a mistress for these past 2 years has been so irritating. She remembered being looked down upon and mocked as a child. They used to say that girl is just a bastard, but she looks just like her mother. Another would add, she'll be married off as a concubine to some low-ranking nobleman. After hearing those words, she would cry uncontrollably. Recalling her childhood, she thought, I just wanted to live a good life, to proudly enjoy the things a noble lady could. Thinking back to that time, she thought, I always had to suppress myself. With a serious expression, she thought, then 2 years ago, Duke Bien, the man who seemed destined to appear, whispered to me that he would stay by my side for life. She thought, the fact that he was married didn't matter anymore. Looking down at the teacup in her hand, she smiled wickedly, thinking, now I'm the Duchess and I'll get everything I want. The woman sitting opposite her smiled wickedly and continued, that's right, your time has come. At the princess's birthday party, you can attend as the Duke's fiancée. Ricky's heart pounded with excitement as she said delightedly, exactly. The scene shifted to Duke Lemuser's mansion. Alicia anxiously asked, is there a problem? Duke Lemuser replied, aside from the planning aspect, I'm actually quite satisfied with the price you've proposed. Seeing Alicia's worried expression, he continued, the idea is intriguing, but the problem lies in the supply. Duke Lemuser went on, this is your first time doing business, so you'll need a large quantity of raw stones, correct? Alicia asked, is the output less than what you'd like? As she asked, she thought, the Duke has already researched the mine's output and is using that information. Seeing her thoughtful expression, Duke Lemuser said, it's not like that. It's just that to fulfill this order, I'll have to cancel deals with several other clients, and that decision is a bit of a gamble for me. Alicia said, if the contract terms between us are better than those of others, you wouldn't have to worry about other clients, right? Unless they're close acquaintances. Duke Lemuser chuckled and said, of course, it's not a matter of whether they're acquaintances or not. Putting down the document, he said, but I'm thinking there's no continued guarantee for this deal, so I can't help but be a little worried. Alicia replied with a smile, don't worry about that. Duke Lemuser was silent for a long moment. With a confident expression, Alicia said, in addition to analyzing the current market, we have the quantity and manpower for supply. I'm not asking you to trust me, but please trust that the contents of the documents I've provided are completely accurate. Duke Lemuser asked, so can I trust it? Alicia nodded with a smile and continued, her expression cheerful. You'll never regret it. Duke Lemuser replied with a smile, you're quite interesting. Usually, people who are this confident when discussing this topic are rather arrogant. He picked up the documents and said, all right, I accept all the proposed terms. Alicia asked, surprised, without any modifications? Duke Lemuser said, let's try trusting your confidence. I believe I have a good eye for people. Alicia replied with a smile, thank you for believing in me. Duke Lemuser continued, smiling, I'll be waiting for you and all the good things to come. After some negotiation, they finally signed the contract. The scene transitioned to Duke Lemuser's mansion sometime later. The butler approached the smiling Duke Lemuser and asked, you seem pleased, Your Grace. Duke Lemuser said in a contemplative tone, of course, and more than that. The butler asked, what is it then? Duke Lemuser said with a smile, like a good friend, perhaps. The butler was silent for a long moment. With a knowing smile, the butler asked, you like her, don't you? Duke Lemuser was so startled he couldn't speak, his face flushing as he exclaimed, what are you saying? It's just a business relationship, just business. The butler chuckled and replied, yes, Your Grace. Duke Lemuser, still blushing, said, I'll be seeing her often from now on, so don't say such things. The scene shifted to another mansion. Someone was arranging pastries on a plate. Another person said, this is from the best bakery. Isn't that the famous sponge cake? Alicia turned around and replied cheerfully, that's right. I signed a contract with a shop on Beppin Street. She handed the cake to Nettie. Nettie took the cake and asked, what? You just went to Beppin Street. With a puzzled expression, she continued, all the jewelry shops are on a different street. Alicia smiled and said, those shops already have plenty of regular customers. Picking up a piece of cake, she continued, if I opened a shop there, I'd surely be swamped. There's no need to sell at high prices right now, but the most important thing is to make a lasting impression on the customers. She smiled confidently. Alicia continued, don't nobles frequent restaurants and cafes? She said, this is also where middle-aged ladies gather, and they're the main customers of jewelry shops. They come here to eat, drink, and refresh their souls. With a cheerful expression, she continued, it's said that buying from an acquaintance is easier and more likely. Nettie said happily, it's a perfect plan, Mississippi. Looking at the cake, Alicia said, let's try this. If it doesn't work, we'll move. There are plenty of opportunities. Nettie asked, so what will the shop be called? Alicia thought, is there any special name? She recalled her past life completely falling apart, but then she was able to rebuild her life and find success, even building many business relationships. Thinking of the joy of shopping with Nettie, she said, Raviable. Nettie asked, what does that mean, miss? With a blissful expression, she replied, it means a wonderful life. Nettie asked, shall I prepare some fruit for you? Alicia replied, sure. With a thoughtful expression, she thought, I need to think carefully about the brand. Nettie was resting her hand on a book. Alicia turned and asked, Nettie, how much does it cost to open a shop? Nettie replied, first, the facilities will cost $10 million. Then, pointing at the book, she continued, the sign and even the interior decorations will be about $2 million. The glass is even more expensive, don't you think? Alicia chuckled softly. Nettie didn't reply and continued flipping through the book, searching for information. Alicia placed her hand on Nettie's head and said, thank you. She said cheerfully, having such a capable assistant like you makes me feel so reassured. Nettie stepped back and said, you're amazing, Mississippi. I'm someone you can rely on. But before she could finish, Alicia saw something that made her expression turn serious. It was the injury on Nettie's hand. With a determined look, she thought, I can't always rely on Nettie. She reached for her coat on the chair. Nettie asked, "Are you going somewhere?" Alicia said, "Aren't there 4 main types of insurance here?" Nettie asked, puzzled. "What 4 insurances?" Alicia said with a smile, "There must be. I have to go check." She closed the main door and left, leaving Nettie bewildered. Nettie sighed worriedly, thinking about Alicia's words. "You mustn't overwork yourself." Alicia walked down the street, looking around, thinking, there's no internet to search here, so I can only rely on walking. She approached a newspaper vendor and said, "A newspaper, please." The vendor turned and asked, "You want to see the newspaper?" He handed her the newspaper and said, "Here you go." Time passed, and the scene returned to Alicia's mansion. A piece of cake and a cup of tea were now placed on the table. Alicia was focused on something. It was the newspaper she had just picked up in the morning. As she read, she thought, the basic monthly salary for employees is around $1.6 million to $1.8 million. She mused, the wages are low, but the tasks for employees are endless. She said, "What if we pay them based on easy work, high compensation?" Nettie replied with a smile, "That's an irresistible attraction." Having said that, Nettie approached Alicia and massaged her shoulders. Nettie gently kneaded and massaged Alicia's stiff back. With a worried expression, she asked, "Miss, aren't you tired?" Alicia replied with a smile, "I'm a little tired, but I'm still healthy." With a thoughtful expression, she continued, "I've long forgotten what a free life is like." Nettie's eyes filled with tears as she stammered, "Miss," however, before she could finish, Alicia turned and said, "I have this life thanks to my ex-husband." "Should I thank that jerk?" Nettie exclaimed in surprise. "Miss, what are you saying?" Alicia replied with a smile, "Just kidding." Then, with a sorrowful expression, she thought, although I received a large alimony after the divorce and lived a free and easy life. For years he kept hitting my self-esteem and self-respect, openly having an affair with Ricky without any guilt. She thought, the things he trampled on are still deeply imprinted in my heart, unable to be erased. With a resentful expression, she thought, the revenge has already begun. The scene shifted to another shop. A man stood in front of a shop, and the words, "Is there a job opening today?" could be heard. As he spoke, the doorbell chimed. The man entered the shop. He slowly approached the shopkeeper, stammering. With a contemplative expression, he continued, explaining his need for a job. Seeing this, the shopkeeper pointed ahead, telling him to look at the classified section of that newspaper. He thanked her. Holding the newspaper, he remarked, "Everyone's looking for highly skilled workers." However, before he could finish his sentence, his face suddenly lit up as he saw something. What he saw was none other than a job posting for a sales position at a jewelry store, offering a salary of $3 million. As he read, he thought happily, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Time flew by, and it was now the next morning. Everyone in the city bustled about, creating a lively and crowded scene. Alicia adjusted her hair and said, to summarize, looking at Nettie, she continued, "Just list the names of the interviewees in order. It would be even better if you could add comments on the client's summary sheet." Nettie replied firmly, "Yes, Mississippi. I will carefully review every detail and won't miss anything." However, before they could rejoice, a knock interrupted the atmosphere. Alicia saw a man enter and greeted him pleasantly. "Hello, you're here for the interview, right?" Time flew by quickly, and the interview ended. Alicia said, "Thank you. We'll contact you after reviewing." Then, Alicia sat thoughtfully, looking at the documents in her hand, while Nettie nodded in agreement to the interviewee. Just like that, the interview process continued for a long time. People came and went, strangely populating her space. The constant flow of people created a vibrant atmosphere. Finally, after a while, the interviews ended. Nettie turned to Alicia happily and said, "Miss, this is the 10th person. Our shop seems quite popular." Alicia replied, "That's because we offer good pay and guaranteed holidays." Nettie hurried over to massage Alicia's shoulders, saying, "I didn't expect it to be this crowded." Alicia replied with a smile, "Thank you. It would be difficult without you." However, before they could finish speaking, an interviewee with a contemplative expression approached. He said, "Hello, is this the interview location for Revivo?" Then he looked around. Alicia replied, "Yes, please have a seat." Hearing this, the man pulled out a chair. He slowly sat down and began the interview. Alicia thought, although his attire is a bit shabby, there's still an air of nobility about him. Looking at him, she reminded herself, it's important to make a good impression on customers. Then she asked, "So what's your last name?" The man stammered, "My last name." After thinking for a moment, he said, "Oh, right, it's Agi." Alicia promptly filled it in on the application form. Time passed, and we are now in Alicia's room some time later. Alicia gathered the documents and said, "Thank you for your effort." Then, with a pleasant smile, she continued, "The results will be announced within a week." The man exclaimed, "But can you tell me now?" Alicia asked curiously why. The man clasped his hands together and said, "I'm in dire need. I will be incredibly grateful if you could hire me. If I get this job, I can start working immediately, even tomorrow." Alicia thought in surprise, just how desperate is he to be this reckless? But before she could ask, Nettie spoke up. "Do you have a particular reason?" The man fell silent, unsure of how to respond. Then he said, "I need money." Alicia replied, flustered, "I understand your situation, but you need to wait a little longer." The man was too dejected to speak. He suddenly stood up, startling both of them. With a desperate expression, he declared, "I'm more capable as a salesman than actual sales experts." He clenched his hands, and flames began to emanate from them. Both Alicia and Nettie were too astonished to speak. Slowly, in his hands, a burst of flame erupted from his fist. He looked at Alicia with an anxious expression and asked, "Is this enough?" Alicia was stunned. She stared at him, thinking he's like a Pafno, or more accurately, a big dog. Flustered, she said, "You're scaring my employee. Could you extinguish the flames first?" Hearing this, Agi extinguished the flames and replied, "Oh, all right." Before he could finish, she said, "I'll hire you." A look of joy spread across his face. Still in disbelief, he asked, "Really?" Even Nettie couldn't believe it. Seeing their reactions, Alicia replied, "Yes, let's sign the contract now." Agi exclaimed joyfully, "Thank you, Mississippi." Alicia replied with a smile, "Then from now on, I'll be counting on you." She thought to herself, despite his appearance, his magical power is quite formidable. "I believe he'll be a good employee." She then said, "Nettie, bring the contract." Nettie stood up to fetch the contract, saying, "Yes, Mississippi." Alicia thought if he were a mage, he could have work for the upper class and receive better treatment. Why did he come here? After a while, Nettie respectfully handed over a document, saying, "You just need to carefully read the contract and then sign it." Alicia then asked, "Have you done any other jobs before? It doesn't necessarily have to be sales." Agi scratched his head, unsure how to answer. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "Not yet." Alicia thought he looks like a prince. Then, looking at his shabby clothes, she thought a poor prince. Looking at his hands, she thought, never worked before, no wonder his hands are so smooth. She handed him a document, saying, "Then let's sign the contract. I'll train you afterward." Time ticked by. The man stood at the door and said, "Thank you very much." Nettie replied, "Thank you. See you again when the shop opens in 10 days. Then she closed the shop door. Nettie turned around and asked worriedly, "Miss, are you sure about hiring him?" Alicia sighed and replied, "Let's hire him first. We can find someone else if it doesn't work out." Alicia looked out the window and said, "That's all for today. Go back to your room." Nettie replied cheerfully, "Yes, Mississippi." That evening, at Alicia's mansion, a letter was placed in Alicia's mailbox. Nettie came running excitedly, saying, "Miss, you have a letter." Alicia took the letter and opened it. Nettie asked excitedly, "What does the letter say?" Alicia replied happily, "It's a letter from Uncle Benson." Night passed and morning arrived. A workshop appeared before us, filled with various jewels, crowns, rings, and necklaces. Alicia gasped in astonishment as she saw them. Moved, she turned to Mr. Hale, who was standing beside her. She reached out, took his hand, and said with admiration in her eyes, "You're amazing. I wouldn't know what to do without you." Mr. Hale chuckled, "I'm not as amazing as you say. I can just see the good in others and appreciate unique charms. I'm not that talented." Alicia turned back to the jewels and asked, "Then how did you make them so quickly?" Mr. Hale replied, "It's thanks to the high-quality gems you provided, coupled with the improved work environment. My work has become much more comfortable and enjoyable." He bowed and said, "Thank you." Alicia was so flustered she couldn't speak. She stammered, "No, it's my duty. Please rise." With a confident expression, she continued, "If this continues, the demand will only increase. From now on, I will continue to support everyone." Mr. Hale replied with a smile, "That's wonderful. Thank you, Mississippi." He continued with an excited tone, "But I'm already very grateful. Thanks to you, people have hope again." Alicia was also moved. Mr. Hale continued, "Unlike the busy life before, now we can work more." With tears in his eyes, he said, "I'm motivated to create more beautiful and precious jewels." Alicia, moved to tears herself, said, "Please, don't say that." She recalled the hardships of the past, how everyone criticized and ostracized her, saying, "What a foolish girl, what a pitiful duchess." Looking at Mr. Hale, she thought, In the Bean family, I was like excess baggage and uninvited guest. I'd forgotten what it felt like to make others happy because of me. Her heart beat faster. Smiling, she thought, so this is what it feels like. The scene shifted to the city the next day. Alicia stood before a door and announced, "This is our shop." Nettie, appearing from inside the shop, exclaimed, "Oh my goodness, miss. Am I dreaming?" Alicia chuckled softly. "Go inside and see for yourself." Then a voice called out, "Boss." Alicia turned in surprise, saying, "Good morning." She saw Celine and Aggie, her shop assistants, standing before her. Smiling, she said, "It's good to see you both." The scene transitioned to inside the shop. Alicia said cheerfully, "Now that everyone's here, I'll briefly explain your jobs." Gesturing towards the jewelry, she continued, "Just stand here, and when a customer wants to see an item, pick it up and show it to them." Celine stood up straight and followed her instructions. Alicia smiled. "Well done, Celine." She turned to Aggie, who was standing motionless. Smiling, Alicia asked, "Can you try?" "Aggie stammered, "Oh, okay." Aggie moved stiffly like a robot. Everyone laughed at his awkward movements. Aggie blushed, scratching his cheek and smiling. After a while, everyone finally adjusted to the new environment. They worked together happily, taking turns resting and growing together. Aggie, too, had changed into more elegant, handsome attire. A noblewoman entered, saying, "Hello, may I look at your jewelry?" Aggie and Celine looked up. Alicia approached with a warm smile. "Good morning, madam," she greeted. The scene shifted to the shop some time later. Seeing the bustling customers, Alicia smiled. "Please, feel free to browse." She turned to her staff, smiling as she saw Nettie, enthusiastically showcasing a necklace. Celine was also meticulously attending to customers, ensuring their satisfaction. A noblewoman spoke. "Are these real? There are so many fakes these days." Celine replied cheerfully, "Yes, they are all genuine. This necklace is made of 100% pure gold with no impurities. So you could trust us." She continued, "If you'd like a similar style, but in a more classic design, you might consider this one," picking up a necklace. Alicia thought, what a professional employee. From her demeanor to her product knowledge and clear explanations, she's excellent. Before she could finish her thought, Nettie rushed over, excitedly saying, "Boss, almost all of Miss Celine's customers want to buy something." Alicia looked at Celine. Nettie asked excitedly, "Are we going to be rich?" Alicia replied, "We still need to see the customer satisfaction rate. It's natural for a new shop to be busy." Looking at the customers, she continued, "They're here out of curiosity. It would be great if we could maintain this momentum." Celine smiled. "You're right. We've received a lot of compliments from customers, so let's think positively." Alicia said, "Uncle Benson and our goldsmiths have crafted the finest gems." Looking at a ring, she continued, "For our customers to see more clearly, every item in our shop is of the highest quality." Celine chuckled. "Boss, you have a great eye." Alicia replied, "That's thanks to your talent, not mine." "Don't say that." Turning to Nettie, she said, "Sales have increased. If we can maintain this level, we can create a brand." Nettie asked curiously, "A brand?" Alicia replied with a chuckle, "You'll see soon." Celine asked, "Will Aggie be coming after I finish work tonight?" Alicia replied, "Of course." Touching the glass display case containing necklaces, she continued, "He needs more practice." Evening arrived, and Aggie, with a stiff demeanor, stammered, "Welcome." A customer pointed at a watch. "I like this watch. How much is it?" Aggie nervously replied, "Yes, please wait a moment." Overhearing the conversation, Alicia turned and observed Aggie's stiff posture. She sighed inwardly. He looks so tense. Where's his usual charm? I thought he was doing well earlier. What's going on? Watching the chattering customer, she wondered, does he only perform well when I'm watching? After a while, Aggie finally relaxed into his work, a bright smile spreading across his face. Girls squealed, one exclaiming, "Oh my God, I think I'm going to have a heart attack." Another said, "I want to take him home and put him in a display case." Alicia smiled, thinking, are these girls just here to see Aggie? Picking up a ledger, she said, "These are the items sold this morning." Before she could finish, a voice interrupted her. She turned to see an indignant noblewoman. "Even with a 50 dinar discount, isn't this too expensive?" Flustered by the situation, Aggie stammered, "Yes, please wait a moment." Alicia stepped in. "He's just an employee. Aggie doesn't have the authority to give discounts. I'm the owner, so please speak to me." The woman asked, "If you're the owner, can you give me a discount?" Alicia stared back at the woman. A silent battle of wills ensued, leaving Aggie gaping. Taking out a box, Alicia thought, I must persuade the customer. Absolutely no insulting language. Be gentle and calm. She said, "First, let's consider the price." She opened the box, revealing a necklace. For you, madam. The most important thing about this necklace is its allure, isn't it? She continued. She thought, redirect her attention from the price back to her initial interest. The woman remained silent for a long moment. Alicia picked up the necklace, placing it around the woman's neck. Smiling, she said, this piece enhances your beauty tenfold. The woman, looking at herself in the mirror, murmured, a necklace befitting my beauty. Agi watched anxiously, not daring to make a sound. Finally, the tactic worked. The woman said, all right. Alicia smiled inwardly. Of course, I studied marketing in my past life. However, the woman added, but the price is still a bit high. This left everyone speechless. Forcing a smile, Alicia asked, so, how much would a necklace like this cost in other shops? The woman stammered, let me see. There are many places that sell it cheaper. Alicia asked, really? Why is that, madam? She thought, I know she's lying, but there's no need to argue. Feigning concern, she said, we've researched market prices, but if that's the case, we should reconsider. Seeing Alicia's reaction, the woman hesitated. I'm not sure. Alicia cheerfully continued. As you said, purchasing this item elsewhere might save you money. Holding up the mirror to the woman, she went on, but even if the designs are similar, there will be a significant difference in the finer details. Let's look at the chain first. Can you see its color and detail? Its purity is higher than other products on the market. Pure gold is very soft, and we put a lot of effort into crafting this. Brightly, she said, so what are you waiting for? We offer a 2-year warranty. She continued, look around. You won't find anywhere that processes gems like we do. Pointing to the necklace, she said, when you wear this, many will look at you with envy. The woman gazed, captivated. Alicia seized the opportunity. It might be a bit expensive, but for your prestige and beauty, isn't it worth it? The woman said, but what if I wear a necklace from another shop? Alicia paused, considering her response. Then she said, rather than you wearing a necklace that will be criticized, we'll give you not just a 50 dinar discount, but a 100 dinar discount. Agi was stunned into silence. Alicia continued cheerfully, I guarantee it. The woman asked in surprise. Really? Alicia replied with a smile. Of course. I never lie to my customers. Hearing this, the woman laughed. All right, then I'll buy it at the original price. Alicia smiled. Thank you very much. I'll give you the warranty card. If you have any problems, please let us know as soon as possible. The noblewoman finally paid for the necklace. Alicia saw her to the door. Thank you for your patronage. She sighed. That was the first time I've dealt with such a difficult situation. That was terrifying. Turning to Agi, she asked with concern, are you all right? She saw Agi looking at her with sparkling eyes of adoration. Alicia asked, why are you looking at me like that? Agi gave her a thumbs up. I was really surprised. How could you handle that difficult customer so easily? Alicia walked over to the display case. Because I believed I could do it, Agi asked. You must have a lot of faith in yourself, right? Alicia smiled and shook her head. But believing in yourself isn't enough. Touching the glass, she continued, you also have to believe in the product you're selling. Agi exclaimed, what a wonderful belief. You're so cool. Hearing this, Alicia gave a warm smile. Agi then asked, but what if they like it but still want a discount? Alicia paused, her gaze sharpening. I'm guessing that will never happen. She thought, I'm a type of person who wants to analyze and control the discourse in conversations, and people are easily swayed by flattery. She continued, smiling. If she receives many compliments on her necklace, then my guess is correct. Agi thought for a moment. I understand. Alicia walked on. Selling an item isn't just about the transaction. It's about finding a way to gain the customer's trust, making even the most difficult customer easy to deal with. Agi asked, what should I do if I encounter such a customer? Alicia replied, don't worry too much. She reassured him, as long as our shop is open, it means the quality of our goods is undeniable, so there's no need to explain that to anyone. Agi said dejectedly, I still have a lot to learn from you, boss. After all, customer service is my job. Alicia sighed, smiling inwardly. He really is a big puppy. She held out her hand. Anyway, let's just use magic. With a confident smile, she continued, I want to learn how to create flames. Before they could finish their conversation, someone approached. Nettie, holding a loaf of bread, said, I brought you more to do. Alicia smiled. You've worked hard. Nettie smiled back. I bought it from the most famous bakery. Alicia turned to Agi. How about everyone comes to my mansion for dinner this Sunday evening? Do you have any other appointments or plans? Agi asked. Next Sunday? Nettie, munching on the bread, said excitedly, that sounds wonderful. Alicia said, Nettie has already agreed. What about you? Agi scratched his cheek, flustered. Okay. Alicia smiled. Then I'll prepare dinner. She announced, we can close the shop now. Everyone replied in unison. Okay. As night fell, Nettie entered the house and noticed the mailbox. She cheerfully retrieved a letter. Miss, you have another letter. She handed the letter to Alicia and, watching as Alicia opened it thoughtfully, asked curiously, "Who is it from?" Alicia smiled. "It's from Lumai's." The next morning arrived. Alicia got out of the carriage and, seeing someone, a look of surprise crossed her face. It was Lumai's. Observing the scene from afar, she thought, just like a painting. Her thoughts were interrupted as she realized something. She firmly shook her head. Having such thoughts about a business partner won't lead to anything good. Grasping the door handle, she thought, "Damn it." Lumai's greeted her. "It's a pleasure to see you, Mississippi." He continued pleasantly, "Please have a seat." Miss Hanbin. Alicia smiled. "Good morning, Duke. You're here quite early." Lumai's replied, "It's worth it to await such an esteemed guest as yourself. Thank you for your valuable time." He continued, "I wasn't sure what kind of tea you prefer, so I haven't ordered yet. Please feel free to choose." Alicia picked up the menu with a pleasant smile. Lumai's watched her with a thoughtful smile. A gentle breeze drifted in through the window. Lumai's continued, "I heard your shop has opened. It hasn't been long since our last transaction." Alicia replied, "Our goldsmiths work quickly, so we've been quite busy lately." Lumai's asked, "May I visit?" Alicia responded, "Of course. We would be honored to welcome you, Duke." She added, "The shop is a little disorganized, so I'm a bit embarrassed." He replied, "It's all right." Alicia asked, "So, what did you want to discuss with me today?" Lumai's replied with a smile, "You're a very interesting person." He continued, "I have a new proposition for you, Miss Hanbin." Alicia felt a flicker of anxiety, wondering what this proposition might be. Seeing her apprehension, Lumai's chuckled softly. "Miss Hanbin, I'd like to propose adding a bit more to our existing contract." He continued, "Not long ago, a new vein was discovered in a mountain owned by a certain family." Lumai said with a smile, "However, the mining operation was quite costly." Alicia thought, surprise, a mine? A new vein? That family must be incredibly wealthy. Lumai's continued, "Fortunately, it recently succeeded in attracting investors." Looking at Alicia's surprised expression, he added, "So the excavation begins tomorrow." He said, "I'd like to offer you the minerals mined from that vein." Alicia asked, "What kind of minerals?" Lumai's replied with a triumphant smile, "Blue lapis lazuli, amethyst, and leorilii." Alicia gasped. Leorilii? She could hardly believe her ears. With an incredulous expression, she thought he actually mined that rare gem. Leorilii was an exceedingly rare gem in this world, with only a handful of stones in existence. Even duchesses, noble women, and those in high society rarely possessed it. Seeing her astonishment, Lumai smiled. "Yes, we acquired it, and we are eager to continue our partnership." A look of delight spread across Alicia's face. "That's wonderful. Thank you, Your Grace." She thought happily, "I was just worrying about finding red gemstones, and today I encounter such good fortune." Lumai's cleared his throat. He clasped his hands together, a blush rising on his cheeks. "There's one more thing." A moment later, a waiter brought a plate of pastries. "Please enjoy." Alicia took a sip of her tea. "So, what did you want to say?" Lumai stammered, blushing even deeper. "Well, it's a bit difficult to say." Alicia prompted, "What is it?" Lumai's finally gathered his courage. "There's going to be a social gathering at the palace." He clutched his teacup nervously. "It's for the princess's upcoming birthday." With a shy expression, he asked, "May I invite you to be my partner for the ball?" Alicia choked, spraying tea across the table. With a stunned expression, she thought, "What did I just hear?" She looked up at him, bewildered. Looking at Lumai's, who was nervously awaiting her response, she thought, if I hadn't seen his face, I wouldn't have believed it. Seeing her prolonged silence, Lumai's said awkwardly, "I was invited to the ball, but I don't have a partner." Alicia stammered, "Oh." He continued nervously, "It's all right if you're busy. Just if you could spare a day, or even just an evening." Alicia replied, "No, it's not a matter of time." With a worried expression, she continued, "It's just, if you go with me, you'll hear unpleasant things." Clutching her skirt, she continued, "I'm divorced from the Duke, and everyone knows. I'm aware of my reputation in this society. If I go with you, I'll tarnish your reputation." With a worried expression, she thought, if I go with him, he'll hear those awful rumors. However, Lumai's calmly replied, "Well, it doesn't matter what others say." He smiled at her. "Miss Hanbin, I don't take your divorce lightly, but I simply want to dance with you." A wave of warmth washed over Alicia. So Lumai's held no prejudice against me from the beginning. Biting her lip, she thought, Touched, he sees me. He genuinely sees me as Alicia Hanbin. Seeing her reaction, Lumai's continued happily. In the jewelry business, reputation and word of mouth are important, aren't they? This is a good opportunity to showcase yourself. Alicia replied with a smile, you're right. Imagining herself the center of attention at the ball, adorned with her necklaces, she thought, he knows I'm in the jewelry business. The Marchionesses are key to increasing sales, or perhaps I should target the influential duchesses. With a confident smile, she thought, I won't be that divorced ex-duchess to be in anymore. I'll be Alicia Hanbin, the goldsmith who will steal their hearts. She smiled and said, then I'll accompany you, Your Grace. Lumai's replied with a gentle smile. Thank you. Alicia beamed. No, you're helping me. I believe you're placing your trust in me as well. Lumai's said cheerfully, then I'll come and pick you up in a week. That evening, at Lumai's mansion, his butler asked, are you planning to attend the ball with her? Lumai's replied, that's right. The butler persisted in asking why he was attending the ball without prior plans, which annoyed him. With a knowing smile, the butler wondered, our Duke has actually taken the initiative to invite a young lady as his partner. He chuckled and asked, you like her, don't you? Caught off guard, Lumai's was speechless with indignation. Waving his hand dismissively, he said loudly, I just want to get to know her better. Don't talk nonsense. The butler asked, if she's just a business partner, why would you do this? Lumai sighed and replied, consider it curiosity. The butler muttered thoughtfully, suddenly wanting to escort a young lady out of mere curiosity seems a bit excessive. Lumai's was once again rendered speechless by annoyance. He stretched, as if trying to shake off the discomfort. Blushing, he thought, isn't this relationship with a business partner moving a bit too fast? Looking at the ceiling, he mused, we've only met twice. He recalled Alicia's captivating demeanor, her smile, and their conversations. Blushing, he thought, her sparkling eyes when she speaks are so lovely. His heart pounded in his chest. The butler asked cheerfully, so, when are you planning to propose? Annoyed by the teasing, Lumai said, stop joking. Be serious. He stood up from his desk and walked out. The butler asked, where are you going? Lumai turned and replied, for a walk. I'll be back later. The butler said with a smile, I understand. The scene shifted to Alicia's mansion. Nettie was cheerfully preparing food. Alicia approached to see what delicacies were being prepared. From beef and fruit to dessert, the dishes looked tempting. Looking at the beautifully arranged food on the table, Nettie said, this is a perfect success. Miss Alicia smiled and said, well done, Nettie. A while later, the guests arrived and rang the doorbell. Nettie opened the door and said cheerfully, welcome. Alicia added, thank you both for coming. Celine, seeing the delicious spread, asked excitedly, did you really prepare all of this for us, miss? I've never had a meal like this, not even on my birthday. She looked at Alicia with admiration, saying longingly, I wish it could be like this every day. Alicia replied with a smile, of course, I'll prepare even better food for you next time. Celine, her eyes sparkling as she looked at the beef on the table, asked, can I really eat such extravagant dishes? Agi said with a delighted expression, oh, this is caviar minin. He gestured to the wine bottle in his hand. He continued, it's been a while since I've tasted this. Thank you, boss. Nettie said excitedly, I've never seen wine like this. Agi, you know a lot about wine. Agi said shyly, oh, it's nothing. I just know a little bit. Seeing them standing there, Alicia said cheerfully, the food's getting cold. Come and sit down. Nettie replied, all right, Mississippi. Everyone chatted happily as they ate. Alicia raised her glass and said, this is our first dinner celebrating the successful opening of the shop. Let's make a toast. Everyone replied cheerfully, yes, of course. They all raised their glasses and said in unison, to Revivra. They continued chatting and eating like a family. Alicia finished her story, put down her glass, and said, that's how it was. Agi said with concern, that must have been difficult for you. Celine added, I think you're truly amazing, boss. Alicia replied with a smile, no, it's thanks to all of you. At first, I thought I could handle it, so I didn't tell anyone. Turning to Nettie, she said, but having you by my side makes me very happy. Nettie placed her warm hand over Alicia's, her expression full of emotion. Being by your side makes me happy too, Mississippi. Alicia replied with a smile, me too. Celine, watching their intimate exchange, said with tears in her eyes, oh, look how happy you two are. She shared her own story. One day, my father had a serious accident, and to help him, I had to do many things I'd never done before. Agi looked at her sadly. Celine turned to Alicia and said, and eventually, I ended up here. Alicia comforted her. I've been through a lot too, so thank you for sharing your story with us. She glanced thoughtfully at Agi and asked, what about you? Agi stammered, can I tell you later? Alicia replied, if it's too difficult to talk about, you don't have to tell us. Share it when you feel comfortable. Agi lowered his head and replied, thank you, boss. Alicia smiled and said, don't be so formal. It's your choice whether you tell us or not. With a look of sadness, she thought, it was my fault for asking so casually. She mused, Duke Lumais is also cautious about talking about his past. But Nettie, seeing her sadness, fidgeted with concern. Trying to change the subject, she said cheerfully, I have some good news to share with everyone. Alicia continued with a smile, I've decided to accept the additional funding from the Lumais family. Nettie added, and he'll be your escort to the birthday ball. Celine and Agi exclaimed excitedly, congratulations. Alicia said, since the Duke has invited me, I'll go. It's also a good opportunity to promote Revivera. Looking at Agi and Celine, she said, so I won't be able to be at the shop that day. I'm leaving everything to you two. They replied, we'll do our best, boss. Don't worry and enjoy yourself. Alicia said gratefully, thank you. I'm counting on you both. The day of the ball arrived. The scene shifted to the ornately decorated palace. Alicia, with her pink hair, walked amongst the magnificent architecture. She entered a salon, and a hairstylist greeted her cheerfully. Welcome. Another stylist said, hello, madam. Realizing her mistake, she stammered an apology. Alicia smiled and said, it's been a while. Please just call me Alicia Hanbin. The stylist draped a towel over Alicia's shoulders and asked pleasantly, what kind of hairstyle would you like? Alicia replied, something that's currently in fashion. Stroking her hair, she thought, if I'm not famous but want to sell my goods, I need to impress people with my fashionable styling. The stylist said cheerfully, how about large curls? They're very popular with young ladies right now, and they would suit you well, bringing out your elegance. Alicia turned and said happily, I like that. She continued, I'd also like a hair treatment. I'll pay for everything. She thought, I need to be fashionable and independent. The stylist handed her a magazine and said, certainly. You can look at this while you wait. Alicia looked thoughtfully at the magazine. This is a fashion magazine. Looking at the clothing designs, she thought, we need to see if our jewelry complements high society clothing and shoes. After a while, the stylist picked up her tools and said cheerfully, let's begin. She combed Alicia's glossy pink hair, then curled it, and finally applied a treatment to make it look even more beautiful. The stylist smiled and said, finished, Mississippi. Alicia looked at herself in the mirror with her ruby-red eyes. She was mesmerized by her transformed appearance. The stylist smiled and said, you look absolutely stunning. She added, I've never heard a negative comment about this hairstyle. Alicia turned, pleased, and said, that's all thanks to your talent. Who else could create such a beautiful hairstyle? The stylist blushed, stammering, oh, you're too kind. Alicia continued with a smile, not at all. You're truly talented. The stylist blushed even deeper, stammering, you flatter me. Alicia smiled to herself, thinking, women love compliments. If you compliment them first, they'll see you in a better light. The stylist asked, that necklace you're wearing is beautiful. Where did you buy it? Alicia smiled smugly, replying with pride, Revivera. The stylist asked in surprise, is that its name? Revive? Alicia replied with a gentle smile, no, that's the name of the shop. The stylist exclaimed, no way, you open a new shop? Alicia touched her necklace and said, that's right, I've been running a jewelry shop for a while now. If you're interested, you can come and have a look. The stylist replied happily, I'd love to. Alicia smiled, pleased that her plan was working. The stylist continued excitedly, it's really beautiful. I'll definitely go. Alicia smiled to herself, thinking, she really likes it, huh? Well, I chose it carefully. She handed the stylist a business card with the shop's name printed on it. Here you go. The stylist asked, what's this? Alicia explained, it's a business card. It has the shop's address and opening hours. Please keep it. She thought business cards are new to this world, but they're essential for marketing. The stylist looked at the business card and said happily, it's beautifully designed. Is that a swan? Alicia replied, yes, it's our brand logo, representing the elegance and beauty of our shop. The stylist asked, what's a logo? Alicia explained with a smile, it's like a symbol that represents the shop. The stylist smiled and said, I've learned a lot from you today, Mississippi. I'll definitely visit your shop. Alicia replied, thank you. If you come to my shop, I'll give you a special discount just for you. The stylist exclaimed, really? You do that for me? Hearing this, Alicia immediately replied, "Of course. Please think of it as a small gift. Be sure to let me know when you come." The stylist replied happily, "Thank you, Mississippi. I'll definitely be there. I've already received so much from you." Alicia thought with a hint of cunning, "There's a reason you're getting the VIP treatment." She continued her internal monologue. "The famous hairstylist, Miss Jackie, is also a princess of the empire. Usually, when someone comes to get their hair done, they naturally chat, and most of the conversation revolves around beauty and fashion. Wouldn't it be wonderful if she could share information and impressions about Revivra? It's the perfect start for word-of-mouth marketing." Just as she anticipated, Jackie declared cheerfully, "I'll be sure to tell the other princesses about your salon." Alicia beamed, "Thank you so much." As she opened her purse, Alicia mused, word-of-mouth marketing feels more natural and comfortable than other forms of advertising. Jackie, seeing the considerable sum Alicia produced, exclaimed, "This is too much." Alicia said with a smile, "Please, accept it. Consider it a tip." With a calculating glint in her eye, she thought, by giving her a generous tip, I gained the support of the staff. As she walked away, she smiled to herself, thinking, this is just a small investment in the shop's image, nothing more. The scene shifted to Alicia's mansion, where she stood at the window, looking down. A carriage arrived, and inside was Lumais. Upon arrival, he stepped out, a smile playing on his lips, waiting for the lady he admired. After a moment, Alicia emerged gracefully, her gait captivating Lumais. He smiled and said, "You've arrived, Mississippi." Alicia returned his smile. "Thank you for coming." Lumais' voice was filled with admiration. "You look beautiful today." Alicia replied, "I'm glad you think so. To be honest, I was a little worried." Lumais reassured her. "To me, you are undoubtedly the most beautiful woman here tonight. There's no need to worry." A delighted smile bloomed on Alicia's face. "Oh my, how can you be so sure?" Lumais replied with a gentle smile. "If you wish to know, I can go and confirm it." He extended his hand. "Shall we go?" Alicia placed her hand in his gladly. "Yes, let's." Time flew by, and soon they arrived at the palace gates. Lumais gracefully stepped out of the carriage and turned to offer his hand. "Please take my hand, Mississippi." Alicia thought, this is the first time I've held a man's hand to enter a ball other than my husband's. Her thoughts drifted to her ex-husband, a stark contrast to Lumais. "I used to be happy holding that wretched man's hand," she reminisced, recalling how he never offered it so gently as Lumais, instead always grumbling, "Are you coming or not?" Lumais, the perfect antithesis of that boorish man, looked at her with a kind smile. "Take your time." Alicia extended her hand, thinking, but things are different now. She took his hand, and together they walked towards the palace entrance. "I need to get used to this," she told herself. Lumais turned to her, his voice soft. "Shall we go in?" Alicia looked at him warmly. "Yes, let's." "Your Grace." As she had anticipated, the whispers followed. "Isn't that the Duchess Bean? She's divorced. Why is she with Duke Lumais?" Lumais called out, "Miss Alicia." Alicia smiled. "It's all right, Your Grace." She looked at him softly, thinking, I knew this would happen, so being here isn't as daunting as I thought it would be. Finally, they reached the palace ballroom. The nobles, seeing them hand in hand, began to murmur amongst themselves. Despite the whispers, they continued forward. A cluster of gossiping nobles commented, "The Duke? Why is Duke Lumais with her?" Hearing the unkind remarks about the woman he cared for, Lumais looked at Alicia with concern. Alicia met his gaze, and he said, "If you're uncomfortable, please tell me, Mississippi." Alicia smiled inwardly. "I'm fine. I'm here to promote my wares. This is nothing." She reassured him gently. "I'm all right, Your Grace." Everyone is busy dancing. Indeed, as he looked around, pleasant music had already begun to play. Lumais watched the musicians and the dancing nobles. After a moment, he smiled at himself. This woman truly. Before he could finish his thought, he felt a small hand take his. He said cheerfully, "I could diligently practiced a few dances for tonight." Alicia smiled in surprise. "You practiced dancing?" Looking at her beautiful face, he replied, "Of course, I must be prepared to escort such a distinguished partner." With expectant eyes, he asked, "Would you care to dance with me?" The scene shifted to another corner of the ballroom. Duke Bian looked at Letitia, saying pleasantly, "Shall we dance?" She smiled. "Yes, Your Grace." Just as they were about to begin, a commotion erupted. "Oh my, look at them. They look so well matched." Letitia turned to Bean. Something interesting must be happening over there. Let's go see. After some jostling, Letitia finally pushed through the crowd. What she saw made her frown in astonishment. Seeing Alicia radiant amongst the crowd, Letitia seethed inwardly. What? Huh? Why her? She glared at Lumai's, burning with rage. Why is she with the Duke? What's going on? Letitia trembled with anger. How could she know someone like the Duke? Since when? How is this possible? I thought she wouldn't dare show her face here. She turned to leave, but in her attempt to escape the crowd, she bumped into Bean. Letitia, he asked, where did you go? Flustered, she covered his eyes with her hand. Nowhere. But it was too late. Bean had already seen his ex-wife dancing with another man. He stammered. Sensing trouble, Letitia tugged at his arm. Let's go somewhere else. Before she could finish, he shook off her hand. Bean stared at his ex-wife, his eyes wide with surprise. She's beautiful, he thought, but why is she with Duke Lumais? Seeing his captivated gaze, Letitia snapped. Your Grace, who are you staring at so intently? Her words jolted him into silence, and he stammered, I've never seen Duke Lumais with a woman before. It's quite surprising, rather odd, actually. Letitia glared. She's utterly shameless. A freshly divorced woman, flaunting herself with a single man like that. Bean muttered, oh, right? He thought, how foolish of me. She's the gold digger who swindled 30% of my family's fortune. Seeing his troubled expression, Letitia quickly said, let's not bother with her. Let's dance. Bean's face darkened. Yes, let's dance. He thought, life is long, and there are plenty of beautiful women. Why should I care about her? The scene shifted to a figure leaning against a pillar, overlooking the banquet. It was the prince. His gaze settled on Alicia. That woman, he murmured. Finally, the music stopped. Lumais looked at Alicia with gentle eyes. What did you think? Alicia smiled. I had no idea you were such a wonderful dancer. It was lovely. Lumais chuckled. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Shall we have another dance? Alicia blushed. Certainly, but I'm a little thirsty. He led her towards the refreshments. Let's get something to drink then. A slightly swaying waiter approached, greeting them with a smile. Lumais returned the smile. Ah, Milburn. Milburn looked at Alicia curiously. And who is this? Alicia curtsied. I'm Alicia Hamden. Milburn smiled. Ah, a pleasure to meet you, Mississippi. He then slung an arm around Lumai's shoulders. Well then, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to borrow this gentleman for a moment. It's been too long since we've had a proper catch-up. Alicia smiled. Of course, I'll be quite all right on my own. Don't worry, Your Grace. You two go ahead. As they walked away, she thought, it's nice to have a moment to myself. A calculating glint entered her eyes. I could feel their eyes on my jewels while we danced. Time to get to work. Before she could continue her thoughts, someone approached. Might I recommend a drink, miss? A lovely cocktail to chase away any loneliness. Alicia smiled inwardly. My bait has been taken. Looking at the woman before her, she thought, it's her, Lady Iro, wife of Marquis Bacon, the rising star of the social scene. She reached for the offered drink, her smile charming. It's a pleasure to meet you. With the practiced ease of a skilled socialite, she continued, thank you for the recommendation. Iro smiled. You're welcome. Iro gestured to a nearby table. It's so lovely to run into you like this. Perhaps we could sit and chat over our drinks. Alicia glanced at the nobles seated there, thinking, if I were alone, they probably wouldn't bother with me. They're likely curious about my connection to the Duke. She replied with a bright smile. Certainly, madam. She thought, this isn't about the Duke and me. It's time to focus on promoting Revivra. A few minutes passed, and Alicia approached the table, her voice pleasant. Hello, everyone. I'm Alicia Hamden. One of the nobles responded, oh, Hamden, it's been a while. They greeted her warmly, inviting her to join them. Alicia smiled. It's all right, I'm fine here. As part of her promotional strategy, she swept her vibrant pink hair back, revealing the glittering necklace and bracelet she wore. The other nobles exchanged knowing glances, and one exclaimed, goodness, you look absolutely radiant, Miss Alicia. Alicia smiled. You flatter me. You're the radiant one. I almost mistook you for an angel descended from heaven. Iro leaned in closer. You've changed so much, I almost didn't recognize you. Her eyes glittered with interest. I must mention that stunning necklace you're wearing. She looked at the necklace again. It's absolutely breathtaking. Alicia smiled. Thank you, madam. She thought, Asterisk, it seems they've noticed my necklace. Just as planned. Asterisk, the other nobles chimed in, their voices filled with admiration. That necklace is exquisite. Where did you purchase it? Seeing her opportunity, Alicia replied, at Revivra. You're too kind. I'm flattered. Another noblewoman gasped. That necklace and bracelet are from Revivra? If I had known, I would have gone there immediately. Alicia inwardly rejoiced. She thought, of course, the jewels I'm wearing today, the ones they admire so much, are all testaments to Mr. Benson's exquisite craftsmanship. She pictured the uncut, raw gemstones, transformed by meticulous cuts, now shimmering under the ballroom lights, captivating everyone's attention. One of the ladies remarked, "I noticed that necklace the moment you stepped onto the dance floor." Iroh added, "Speaking of dancing," her eyes filled with curiosity, "forgive my boldness, but what is your relationship with the Duke?" Alicia smiled inwardly. The time has come. The scene flashed back to an hour earlier, where the royal nobles gathered, laughing and chatting over drinks. The prince took a sip from his glass, then turned to look behind him. His gaze fell upon Duke Lumais, then shifted to the woman dancing with him. He paused, a thoughtful expression on his face. "That woman," he murmured. The princess, noticing her brother's stare, asked cheerfully, "Brother, what are you looking at?" His expression turned serious. "I think I saw someone I know." He turned away without further explanation. The princess, realizing what he meant, exclaimed, "Oh, Lady Bien, she's dancing with Duke Lumais." Surprise laced her voice. "Lady Bien?" The princess looked at him, puzzled. "What's wrong?" "She's the one I mentioned to you before." The prince scratched his head awkwardly. "Oh, I didn't realize you were talking about her." A nearby noble scoffed. "Imagine showing up at an event like this right after her divorce, and with Duke Lumais no less. Unbelievable." The prince frowned, anger simmering within him. He's never shown interest in a woman before. Why her? Before he could dwell on it, the noble chuckled. "Are they lovers?" The prince gripped his glass tighter, his anger rising. He retorted, "Two people dancing doesn't automatically make them lovers." The noble laughed. "Of course, why else would they be dancing together?" The prince sneered. "Do you recall me dancing with Selena at her birthday party 5 years ago?" The noble's laughter abruptly ceased. The prince glared at him. "So, you're implying I was in love with my own sister?" The noble stammered, That's... The surrounding nobles, witnessing the awkward exchange, remained silent. The prince sighed. Another preposterous situation. The noble bowed his head. "Your Highness, I apologize. Please forgive me." The princess's eyes widened. She looped her arm through her brother's. "Brother, if you want to dance, let's dance together." The prince smiled. "All right, let's go." He stood and headed towards the dance floor, glancing back at the embarrassed noble with a chuckle. "I was just joking. Relax." The royal siblings departed the gathering, the prince casting one last glance at Alicia. The scene returned to the present, where Alicia smiled confidently. "We have a special relationship." The nobles gasped, speechless. Iroh asked, bewildered, "What kind of relationship?" Alicia thought, "Let's see how far your imaginations can stretch." She continued, "We've decided to trust each other." Iroh stared at her, dumbfounded. Alicia smiled. "Because we're business partners." She touched her necklace, explaining, "Actually, I own a jewelry shop, and this is one of our pieces." The nobles murmured in surprise, one of them asking, "Is it your shop, Miss Alicia?" Alicia smiled modestly. "It's quite small, so I'm a bit embarrassed to mention it. It's called Revivera at 12 Lily Lane." One noble said, "I think I've been there." Another added, "I was planning to visit." "So it's Miss Hambin's shop. I thought you were a customer." They continued discussing the shop. Alicia thought catching their attention was the first step, and it worked. "But I need to generate more buzz." One noble asked, "If you're just business partners, does that mean you've been there with Duke Lumais as well?" Alicia replied, "Only once." The noble pressed further. "Are you too close?" Alicia thought, "I need to maintain an air of mystery." She smiled. "The Duke is a very kind person. Besides our business dealings, we also enjoy pleasant conversations. I don't know if I'll ever find such a good friend again." Iroh said, puzzled, "But he's never had any female friends before." Alicia replied, "That's thanks to these gems." Touching a gemstone on her dress, she explained, "I showed him my jewelry designs and introduced him to my goldsmith. He was quite impressed." She continued, "He expressed a desire for us to have a deeper connection." She thought, "I need them to believe that the Duke is captivated by Revivera's jewelry, that our closeness stems from a shared appreciation for these pieces." She added, "The Duke's favorite things are still my jewels." He even hinted at wanting to establish a more long-term relationship, perhaps. Iroh stared at her, dumbfounded. Alicia thought, "I'm lucky to have the Duke as my unwitting ambassador." People always prefer recommendations, don't they? It was the same in my past life with all those advertisements. Meanwhile, Lumais, completely unaware of his role as a free advertisement, continued to enjoy his drinks with Milburn. Alicia smiled. "When you come to my shop, I'm sure you'll find something you like." I'll personally help you choose the most suitable pieces. The nobles replied in unison, "Thank you." Alicia chuckled. "Thank you for your support. I hope to live up to your expectations." Before she could finish, Iroh enthusiastically interrupted, "Don't say that. Your business will surely flourish. We'll definitely come and support you." Alicia beamed, taking a sip from her glass. "My main target tonight is to capture the attention of these ladies. The more noble women who buy and wear my brand, the better the advertising effect. And after introducing it to these ladies, the male customers who come to our shop will be another customer base. These male customers will find what they need, like pocket watches. That's the next step of my plan." She set down her glass and stood. "Excuse me for a moment." The nobles looked up at her. "Are you leaving?" Alicia smiled. "I'm just going to get some fresh air. I haven't had alcohol in a while, so I'm feeling a bit lightheaded. Moderation is key. Saying too much will be counterproductive." The scene shifted to the palace gardens. Alicia stood alone, sighing. Rubbing her tired shoulders, she murmured, "Good job, Alicia." Determination flickered in her eyes. Suddenly, a voice called out. Mississippi startled. Alicia turned, her eyes widening in surprise at the speaker. Bathed in the serene moonlight, the palace shimmered. The prince walked towards her. "Hello, Mississippi." He approached her gracefully. Flustered, Alicia asked, "Who are you?" The prince remained silent, continuing to walk towards her. Alicia stared at him, bewildered. Her gaze fell upon the crest on his coat. Her voice trembled slightly. "You," she stammered, a memory flashing through her mind. A man snatching a necklace right before her eyes. The memory was thick with unspoken tension. The man had the same blonde hair and sharp gaze as the person before her. The prince stepped closer. "You remember me, don't you?" Alicia sputtered. "Unless I'm a complete idiot, how could I forget that day?" She stared suspiciously at the crest on his chest. "Is he royalty?" Then, with her Conan-like deduction skills, she thought, judging by his age, he must be in his 20s, the youngest royal I haven't met yet. That can only mean His Highness, the Crown Prince. Seeing her expression, the prince smiled. Alicia immediately curtsied. "It's an honor to meet you, Your Highness." The prince bowed in return. "I'm not here for pleasantries. I apologize for the disappointment." Hearing his tone, Alicia thought indignantly, "This is definitely His Highness." She straightened up. "Where do you know me? Doesn't he have more important things to do than come all the way out here?" Panic bloomed in her chest, her anxiety escalating. "Is he going to punish me?" But it was his own fault, dressing like a commoner. Then, in a flurry of disquiet, she thought, "But I did take the necklace after all. I know it was my fault." However, before her thoughts could unravel further, he spoke. "Regarding the incident last time, please accept my apologies." He bowed again, a gesture of contrition. Alicia gasped. "What? This is beyond my expectations." The prince looked up at the bright moon. "I wanted to do something special for my sister's birthday." He chuckled softly. "I suppose I was a bit greedy that day." Alicia's mind raced. "Like, if I agree now, am I just tying the noose around my own neck?" She stammered, "No, it's not like that, Your Highness. It was my fault. I didn't explain myself clearly and caused a misunderstanding. You don't need to worry about it." The prince frowned. "It seems my apology wasn't sincere enough. An apology shouldn't be like this." Alicia thought, "He's not going to kneel, is he?" Before she could finish that thought, he said, "I hope there won't be any misunderstandings like last time." Alicia responded awkwardly, "I'm really fine." Inwardly, she fumed. "We're never going to see each other again, Your Highness." But before she could dwell on that, he turned, a pleasant expression on his face. "I'd like to invite you to dinner. What do you think?" Alicia blinked. "Dinner?" A troubled expression crossed her face. "Well, I've come this far. Thanks to my connection with Duke Lumais, I've had the opportunity to come up with the idea for my own brand." Looking at the prince, she thought, if I get involved with His Highness now, what's the difference between me and a vixen seducing everyone? She imagined people gossiping about her. Then I'll receive countless scornful glances. Just like today. She clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. "I don't like being misunderstood for things that have nothing to do with me." Seeing her continued silence, the prince smiled. "I hope you don't feel uncomfortable. I simply wanted to invite you to dinner." Before he could finish, a voice called out, "Miss Hamden." They turned to see Duke Lumais. Seeing the prince, he bowed. "Greetings, Your Highness." The prince responded thoughtfully, "It's been a while since I've seen you at a ball." Lumais smiled. "Yes, Your Highness. I accompanied Miss Hamden here." He continued, "Miss Hamden, I couldn't find you, so I came looking. I still need to escort you home." The prince glanced between them. "Escort her home?" Lumai smiled. "Yes, I invited her to this event. I consider it my responsibility to ensure her safe passage." there and back. A flicker of anger sparked in the prince's eyes. He asked in a low voice, "Are you two such close dance partners?" Lumais replied, clearly taking Alicia's side. He smiled. "As you can see, Your Highness, we are quite close." The prince replied, "I saw you dancing earlier, but only for one song. If you're so close, shouldn't you have danced more?" Lumai smiled. Miss Hampden mentioned feeling a bit dizzy and wanted a rest. "Your Highness needn't worry." The prince scoffed. "You're rather bold tonight." Lumais returned the cold smile. "I'm merely stating facts, Your Highness." Alicia stood between them, speechless at their escalating argument. She quickly pushed them apart, wanting to stop the contention. She looked at Lumais. "Please excuse us, Your Grace." Then, turning to the prince, she said, "You should go inside, Your Highness." Her expression flustered. She continued, "I must be going home now. Please excuse me." Lumai stepped forward. "Of course." Then, with a concerned tone, he asked, "Miss Hampden, you don't look well." The prince, witnessing this, was speechless with anger. Lumais took Alicia's hand, bowed to the prince, and said, "Miss Hampden isn't feeling well, so we'll be taking our leave now. Please forgive our abrupt departure, Your Highness." Alicia, seeing this, was also rendered speechless. Looking at Lumais holding her hand, she thought anxiously, even if he's the most powerful man in the empire, how can he disregard his highness like this? The prince was silent for a long moment. Then, turning, he said, "If Miss Hampden is feeling fatigued, then please, by all means." As Alicia walked away, she thought, even if his highness is suppressing his anger, if he feels burdened, couldn't he just give up on the idea? Watching them leave, the prince smiled. Interesting. Lumais continued to hold Alicia's hand as they walked beneath the palace lights. Alicia remained silent, her heart pounding in her chest. Looking at Lumais' hand holding hers, she wondered, should we still be holding hands? Before her thought could fully form, he turned and said, "Wait a moment." Alicia panicked. "Now what?" Lumais was removing his jacket. He gently draped the jacket over her shoulders, his expression concerned. "I thought you might be cold." Alicia blushed, flustered. "I'm fine, Your Grace." Lumais said, "Look, that dress is quite thin. You must be freezing, right?" Alicia stammered, "Thank you, Your Grace." Lumais stepped closer, a smile playing on his lips. "Much better, isn't it?" Alicia blushed, thinking that expression again. Later, within the palace walls, Alicia shook her head vigorously. "I need to focus on work." Lumais, surprised by her reaction, asked with concern, "Miss Hampden, are you cold? You're shivering." Alicia clutched the jacket tightly. "Oh no, I'll return this to you, Your Grace." Lumais smiled, readjusting the jacket on her shoulders. "It's all right. You can return it later. Wear it for now." Then, looking slightly embarrassed, he added, "Thinking about it, I was a bit presumptuous." Alicia asked what? He looked thoughtful. "Bringing you here so suddenly. I was a bit careless." Alicia recalled the prince's angry expression. She smiled, a realization dawning on her. "No, I'm very grateful to you, Your Grace." She thought, "Thanks to you, I dodged the prince's invitation, and I even managed to do it without making it obvious." Lumai said, "Miss Hampden." Alicia replied, "Yes?" He asked anxiously, "Did His Highness say anything else?" Alicia was surprised. "What do you mean?" Lumais looked flustered. "Well, I was just wondering if His Highness said anything else besides inviting you to dinner." She replied, "He apologized for what happened a few days ago." Lumais asked, "Did you meet with His Highness privately?" She answered, "No, not exactly. Something happened when he was dressed as a commoner." Lumais responded thoughtfully, "I see." Then, turning abruptly, he said, a note of panic in his voice, "If you don't want to discuss it, I won't ask any further." Before he could finish, she called out, "Your Grace." He turned back as she gave him a bright smile. "Thank you so much for everything you've done today." Lumais asked, puzzled, "What do you mean?" Alicia smiled. "This ball, it's like a turning point in my life." She continued, a hint of sadness in her voice. "I should have just been a pitiful woman abandoned by her husband. But thanks to you, Your Grace, I have this opportunity to build my business." Lumai smiled. "Oh, it's nothing. A simple thank you is enough. If you succeed, I'll be happy for you too. After all, we're in the same boat." Alicia smiled. "Yes, we're in the same boat now." Lumais chuckled. "Well, I'm honored to be friends with someone as intelligent and beautiful as you, Miss Hampden." Alicia smiled softly. Suddenly, the sound of a carriage caught their attention. Lumai said, "Miss Hampden, I see a carriage over there." Alicia saw the carriage too, thinking, "Is it time to leave already?" Lumais extended his hand, smiling. "Let's go. I'll help you into the carriage." Alicia reached out and took his hand, and they walked towards the carriage together. Finally, they reached the carriage. Lumais looked at her. "We'll see each other again soon, but somewhere else." she asked. Do you want to continue accompanying me? Lumai smiled and lifted her hand. Of course. Alicia turned and stepped into the carriage, looking back with a smile. Me too. Stay in touch. The coachman spoke once Alicia was settled. We're off. The carriage wheels began to turn. Lumai's watched the carriage depart for a long moment. Inside the carriage, Alicia pondered, does he really mean it? Thinking of Lumai's, she mused, and I simply enjoy conversing with him. The next morning, Revivra bustled with activity after the ball. Numerous nobles came to visit the shop. Looking at the scene before her, Alicia thought the impact of the ball is even greater than I imagined. Every noblewoman she'd encountered last night had come to visit Revivra. Of course, thanks to Lady Iroha's influence, the number of customers had multiplied. Nettie, holding the ledger, exclaimed excitedly, sales are soaring. Alicia smiled. It's all thanks to the ball. Evening arrived, and after a day of ceaseless work, everyone was exhausted. A hand slammed onto the table. It was Alicia, her expression cheerful. All right, everyone, let's keep working. Later, at Alicia's residence, she wore a worried expression. Today will be tough for Angie and Celine. Nettie said, Miss, aren't you tired? You've been working all day at the shop, and now you're working at home. Alicia smiled. Look, Nettie. She showed Nettie a book filled with charts. What's this, miss? Nettie asked. Alicia grinned. It's the sales chart. Since the ball, sales have jumped by 50%. Nettie's jaw dropped. Our shop is booming. Alicia smiled. That's right, 50% at first. It will gradually decrease, but the upward trend is clear. Nettie's eyes welled with tears of joy. This is wonderful, miss. Alicia thought, puzzled, is it really that exciting? She placed the ledger on the table. With a contemplative expression, she mused, however, I still can't let my guard down. She thought of the mansion she had shared with Duke Bien. Her face darkened. I can't be at peace. She thought of Bien and Lady Rieti. Asterisk on Bien's ex-wife, disgracefully discarded. I started this fashion brand to climb back into high society. And even Duke Lumai's brief attention, it's all just the beginning. Asterisk, she slammed the ledger shut, startling Nettie. With a serious expression, she said, Nettie, we need a shop sign. A sign? Nettie asked, confused. Alicia smiled, explaining, we're going to turn our brand image into a large sign and put it up at the shop. Nettie smiled. You mean the swan wing design? Alicia smiled. Exactly. When people think of Revivra, they should think of swan wings. We need to make it eye-catching. She thought Revivra, the most unique brand in the empire. I'll make it unparalleled. The scene shifted to someone's residence. Late at night, a man sat in a chair, lost in thought. The atmosphere was tense. A knock came at the door. The man said in a low voice, Come in. Someone entered. Marquis, the damage is worse than I anticipated. The man roared in anger. Why would that goldsmith do this? The aide stammered. It's because the man yelled, Who? The aide finally spoke. The former Lady Bien. The man looked up. Alicia Hamden. The scene changed again to a set dining table. Nettie asked curiously as she ate, Miss, is it really necessary to memorize all those designs? Alicia chuckled. Don't underestimate the power of branding. It can be crucial. If we have a unique logo, people will instantly recognize our brand, no explanations needed. Nettie smiled. It's certainly easier to remember than just the shop name, especially with different brands everywhere. Alicia smiled. Exactly, Nettie exclaimed. I can't believe you came up with this idea, Mississippi. It's brilliant. Then, curiously, she asked, How many more employees are you planning to hire, miss? Alicia replied, What do you think? Nettie held up 3 fingers. With the current increase in customers, I think 3 more employees should be enough. She continued excitedly. Celine and Angie each work for an hour serving customers. With more staff, I can focus on managing, writing business reports, and handling urgent matters. I think we just need 1 more person to directly assist you. Miss Alicia smiled, but didn't answer. Nettie panicked. Worry etched on her face. Is that not all right, miss? Suddenly, a hand reached out. It was Alicia, a blissful smile gracing her features. She embraced Nettie. Nettie exclaimed in surprise, Miss? Alicia spoke kindly. Everything you said is correct. You're such a valuable assistant. Nettie blushed, embarrassed. Oh, it's all thanks to your guidance. Alicia said cheerfully, You've done well, Nettie. Is there anything else you need, miss? Nettie asked. Alicia replied, one more thing. We're opening a second and third branch. Nettie looked bewildered. But isn't that too sudden, miss? Alicia took a sip of her tea. I've been thinking about expanding the jewelry business. If we can maintain this for 2 more months, it means Revivera will have a loyal customer base. That means we'll need more shops. Nettie asked excitedly. So Revivera is reopening? Alicia smiled. The second and third branches are just the beginning. There will be more. Nettie gasped. That's amazing. Alicia said, it's called franchising. We can open shops in other locations and let them use our name. Nettie looked confused. What's the benefit of letting them use our name? Alicia explained, we can earn a certain percentage of their profits. We earn income by renting out the space and by renting out the brand name. Nettie blinked, still processing the information. Renting out the brand name? Her eyes lit up, and she continued with adoration. Then you'll become very rich. Miss Alicia reached out and held Nettie's hand, a bright smile on her face. Not just me, us. Nettie stammered. Not us, miss, just you. I'm just a servant. Alicia smiled. You're a member of the Hambin family now, Nettie. Not like the maids of the Bean family in the past. You're my invaluable partner. Tears welled up in Nettie's eyes. Alicia embraced her. Like I said before, everything I've achieved is thanks to you, Nettie. Nettie smiled, feeling appreciated. I'm so happy, Mississippi. The scene then shifted to outside the mansion. Alicia said to Nettie, even if everyone turns their back on me, abandons me, thank you for always staying by my side, Nettie. She wiped away her tears and then continued cheerfully. You're my only family. Hearing this, Nettie clutched her skirt tightly, tears welling in her eyes. She trembled, then hugged Alicia tightly, crying out loud, Miss! She sobbed as she spoke. As long as I can follow, miss, I can go anywhere. No matter what happens, I'll always be by your side. Touched by these words, Alicia patted her head and then comforted her. If we work hard together, everything will be all right. With that, she thought resolutely, we will be happy. I will make it happen. The scene then shifted to outside the shop. The next day, a sign hung on the door that read closed. Only Nettie and Alicia were inside the shop. Alicia closed her book, pondered for a moment, and then said with a smile, Nettie, come with me tomorrow. Nettie turned around in surprise and asked, why so suddenly? Alicia replied with a smile, I plan to set up an office, recruit employees, and handle the shop expansion. Nettie then asked, an office? Will you be working there? Alicia walked over and said, I'll be working there too. I'll put you in charge of the overall shop management. Hearing this, Nettie asked worriedly, what about Celine and Angie? Will we be far away from them? Seeing her concern, Alicia placed a hand on her shoulder. Then she reassured her, it won't be too far from where we are now, so don't worry too much. However, when Nettie heard this, her face fell as she would be leaving her friends. Seeing this, Alicia offered a comforting smile, then a thoughtful expression crossed her face. Come to think of it, she mused, Nettie is about the same age as my younger brother. But before the thought could fully form, she shook her head, chiding herself internally. Why am I thinking about this? Think about something else. A moment later, she was lost in thought again, her face blank. It turned out the person she was thinking about was none other than Liam Bean. Realizing she was thinking of him, she panicked. Alicia patted her head, exclaiming, I'm going crazy. Seeing her actions, Nettie cried out in alarm. Oh, miss. Alicia grinned. It's not like that. Trying to suppress her laughter, she said, it's nothing. Remember to come to the office tomorrow. Seeing her strange behavior, Nettie spoke with tears in her eyes. Miss must be working so hard. However, before she could finish her thought, someone opened the door and said, hello. It was none other than Angie who walked in. Seeing Angie, Nettie became as excited as a puppy, exclaiming, you came. She immediately began bustling around, attending to Angie. Angie said, flustered, it seems you have some good news. Alicia added, come here, I have some good news to tell you. The two then sat down in a room. Alicia continued cheerfully, we're going to hire 4 more employees. Looking at Angie, she continued, 2 people will be assisting you. She added thoughtfully, Nettie and I will probably be moving to an office. Hearing this, Angie drooped like a sad puppy. Then there are only 4 days left to work with the shop owner. Alicia said with a smile, I feel bad for Nettie too, but you'll still see us often. Reassured, Angie replied, yes, shop owner. Alicia thought proudly, he's the face of this shop. She mused, after all, Angie is the most charming one in our shop, the main attraction. Thanks to him, girls always come to buy our goods. When Angie explains things cheerfully, the female customers flock in like they've been brainwashed by a pyramid scheme. Then she remembered someone once giving Angie a letter. Angie had asked in surprise, "What's this?" The girl had said with a smile, "Every time I see you, however." Before she could finish, she fainted from Angie's beauty. Alicia, watching from behind, couldn't help but chuckle. "Back in the present," she said with a smile, "even without me, the shop will still be lively, thanks mainly to Angie." Angie immediately responded, "No, it's all thanks to the shop owner. I still have a long way to go." Alicia said with a smile, "Attracting customers is also a talent, so you should be proud of it." Hearing this, Angie lowered his head, causing her to worry. She asked, "What's wrong, Angie?" He stammered. Blushing, he asked, "Am I charming?" Alicia replied, puzzled, "Yes, why?" Angie continued, "Because I don't know what to do about it." Alicia chuckled softly. "Then be careful next time. Be mindful of your strengths." She thought to herself, "In my past life, when I heard celebrities say that, I just dismissed it as nonsense." She continued cheerfully, "Good luck in the future, pretty boy." The scene then shifted to someone slowly walking into the shop. Hearing the bell, Nettie greeted cheerfully, "Welcome." Then she said, "Wangjiang Why? I'm sorry. We're not open yet." Despite her words, the man standing before her remained silent. Then the scene shifted again to someone slowly walking into the shop. Hearing the bell, Nettie greeted cheerfully, "Welcome." Then she said, "Wangjiang Why? I'm sorry. We're not open yet." Sensing something was wrong, Alicia quickly rose from her chair. Seeing the man's fury, Nettie screamed in terror, "Mark Voslak." He shoved Nettie aside deliberately, then sneered, "It seems Madam has become quite renowned amongst high society." He continued with a smirk, "Oh wait, you're divorced. You're no longer a duchess. Miss Hamden." Hearing his words, Alicia's fists clenched in anger, but she forced a smile. "Thank you. I see you came alone. Your wife must have wanted you to inquire about the jewelry in my shop." He lunged towards her furiously, shouting, "Don't you know why I'm here?" As if declaring war, he raged, "I'm here on behalf of John Maruccio and Byman." Nettie, standing beside her, was stunned speechless by his words. Marquis Voslak was currently the owner of the empire's most prominent jewelry companies, Gian Maruccio and Byman, which collected gems from skilled artisans and supplied them to jewelers. He profited from these companies. Alicia now looked at him with apprehension. "You, a newly divorced woman, don't understand any etiquette or rules." He sneered, continuing, "I assumed you opened this shop using the assets left by the Duke." Hearing these insults, Angie seethed with rage. He slowly moved forward, wanting to retaliate. However, before he could act, Nettie stepped forward, shouting, "Don't speak to our miss like that. Apologize to her right now." Alicia raised her hand. "It's all right. Let me handle this." Then she said, "Marquis, what is your purpose in coming here?" He laughed. "I couldn't overlook this, so I came." Alicia countered, "Isn't this a bit absurd? We're all working hard in our own ways." Voslak slammed his hand on the table furiously, shouting, "Do you know how much damage you've caused me?" Alicia calmly asked, "Then tell me, what damage have I caused you, Marquis?" He responded angrily, "Stop playing dumb. You bribed the goldsmiths, leaving us with no goods." Seeing his arrogance, Angie, furious, wanted to lunge forward with his fists, but Nettie held him back. Alicia scoffed, "So you want me to terminate the exclusive contract?" Voslak laughed. "Now we're getting somewhere. Stop interfering with my business and bothering me." Alicia continued, smiling, "I have 3 conditions. If you pay the 3 years' worth of labor costs that I agreed upon with the goldsmiths, I'll cancel the exclusivity." Voslak exclaimed in surprise, "What? 3 years of labor costs?" Alicia replied with a smile, "That includes base salary and bonuses, roughly 120,000 to 240,000 dinars per person." Hearing this, Voslak stood up furiously, shouting, "That's preposterous." Witnessing everything, Nettie smiled inwardly, thinking, finally, Miss couldn't take him anymore. He roared, "Do you want to follow in their footsteps? Learn some manners if you want to live peacefully in this land." Alicia calmly asked, "Who is the one who needs to learn manners? You exploited their labor. Are you giving me trouble because you think I haven't earned my money honestly?" Voslak retorted angrily, "Are you lecturing me now? Because I can't even manage a single shop? Today, I'll teach you some manners." Then a shout echoed through the room, "Get in here." Everyone was startled by his yell. Moments later, A group of burly men armed with clubs entered the shop. Seeing this, Nettie screamed in worry. "Miss, it's dangerous." Vaslak commanded his men, "Destroy everything, the jewels, the windows. Smash it all." But before he could finish his sentence, Angie stepped forward furiously. "Stop." Annoyed, Vaslak asked, "Who are you?" Seeing the situation escalating, Alicia cried out, "Angie, no, it's too dangerous." But he continued, "The shop owner told me to stay calm, but I can't hold back anymore." Vaslak scoffed. "Who do you think you are, interfering in my business?" He turned to his men and ordered, "Take care of this kid." They all responded, "Yes, sir." Angie sneered. "Do you really not know who I am?" Vaslak shouted angrily. "Why would I know who you are? You're just a ragged nobody." Angie covered his face and laughed. "If you don't know, then keep your mouth shut." Then he scoffed. "Otherwise, you won't even have a hole to crawl into." Vaslak, enraged, grabbed Angie by the collar. "What did you just say?" Nettie said frantically. "Miss, Angie's lost control. We need to reconcile with the Marquis." Alicia said, "We need to stop Angie first." Then, a look of horror washed over her face as something caught her eye. She screamed, "No, Angie!" Nettie, too, was bathed in the orange glow, staring in speechless surprise. A massive blaze of fire erupted before them. The flames were conjured by Angie. He glared at Vaslak. "If you want to be roasted alive, come closer." As he spoke, he summoned an even larger inferno. Seeing the flames, Vaslak's men were too terrified to advance. Vaslak, seeing the situation turn sour, muttered angrily, "You little brat." Nettie, watching from behind, cheered, "Miss, it seems Angie's magic worked." Alicia thought to herself, indeed, during Angie's interview, he did say, "As a bodyguard, I have more skills than a salesperson. For example, the skill of stopping robbers." He demonstrated fire magic just like this back then. She worried, "If Angie hadn't stepped in, my shop would have been destroyed." Vaslak, seeing himself at a disadvantage, roared in frustration, "You little punk." He snatched a hammer from one of his men. "Since you like it so much, I'll play along." He then raised the hammer, aiming for Angie's face. However, before it could connect, Angie dodged effortlessly. Vaslak, seeing his attack so easily avoided, was speechless with rage. Angie then grabbed Vaslak's arm with his flame-wreathed hand. He punched Vaslak with all his might, a blow that likely loosened every tooth in his head. The hammer clattered to the floor. He said calmly, "To deal with someone like you, my fists are enough." Vaslak's men, seeing him subdued so easily, fled the shop in a panic, screaming, "Monster!" Vaslak, held firmly in Angie's grip, was in too much pain to speak. Seeing this, Alicia stepped forward. "Stop, Marquis." Angie, however, before they could calm down, someone called out, "What's going on here?" It was Duplessis Metzer. They stared at each other for a long moment. No one spoke. Angie asked angrily, "And who is this?" Nettie replied excitedly, "It's Duke Metzer." Vaslak, too, exclaimed in surprise, the Duke. Seeing someone he favored being bullied, Metzer said angrily, "Marquis Vaslak." He asked with a furious expression, "What in the world are you doing?" Alicia, seeing the fear on Vaslak's face, thought with a smile, "Usually, we're at a disadvantage against the powerful. He's definitely not someone to be trifled with." She then said, "Duke, I've run into a little trouble with my work." Metzer turned to Vaslak, his face filled with murderous intent. "You don't need to explain in detail. You understand the consequences, don't you?" He declared with a predatory gaze. "This lady is a friend and business partner of mine." He then looked at Vaslak's terrified face. "You just frightened her." Alicia thought in astonishment. He didn't even use force or harsh words, but I can still feel the overwhelming pressure. Looking at Vaslak, Metzer said, "Stanley, I hope we won't be working together anymore." Vaslak was speechless with shock. He stammered, "It's not what you think, Duke. I just wanted to talk." Metzer scoffed. "You brought a group of mercenaries to talk." He sighed. "I thought we could build a good friendship, but I'm afraid that's impossible now." Vaslak cried out desperately, "You can't do this, Duke." Alicia, witnessing everything, thought worriedly, "I didn't expect things to escalate this much." Seeing his livelihood about to be ruined, Vaslak shouted, "Haven't our families always maintained a business relationship?" Metzer, picturing the image of their family shaking hands, said, "I don't care how close our families are, but I have no intention of working with those who threaten others' livelihoods for their own benefit." He glared at Vaslak. Vaslak yelled, "My business is ruined because of this woman." He pointed at Alicia furiously. "It's all because of this immoral woman. It's all her fault." Hearing the insults directed at his employer, Angie slowly raised his hand. However, before he could unleash his magic, someone rushed forward. It was Alicia, her face etched with worry. "Calm down, Angie," she pleaded. She stepped toward Vaslak. Seeing her approach, Angie asked with concern, "Where are you going?" Alicia thought to herself, this isn't the time for Angie to show off. The Duke's arrival has complicated things. She stood calmly between the two men. Alicia then remained silent for a long moment. She lowered her head. "I'm sorry." Metzer was taken aback by her demeanor. Vaslak, too, was stunned, unsure of what to say. Angie simply watched her, uncertain of what to do next. She stood calmly between the two men. Alicia then remained silent for a long moment. She lowered her head. "I'm sorry." Metzer was taken aback by her actions. Vaslak, too, was stunned, unsure what to say. Angie simply watched her, uncertain of what to do next. She continued, her head still bowed. "As the owner of Revivera, I am deeply ashamed." Seeing her behavior, Vaslak seized the opportunity, sneering, "So you've finally come to your senses." Metzer, witnessing her actions, called out worriedly. Mississippi, even Angie, standing behind her, was surprised, thinking, why is the owner doing this? However, before anyone could react, she stood before Vaslak and said, "You ugly, vile, shameless man, you nearly gave me a fright." Then, she scoffed, "You should be the one ashamed." Her sudden shift in attitude stunned everyone around her. Metzer, with a smile, thought, "That's right." Vaslak, seeing her like this, gritted his teeth in fury. He then roared in anger, "Even if you're divorced, this isn't over," she retorted, her voice laced with annoyance. "Unfair wages and exploiting goldsmiths." Pointing at Vaslak, she continued furiously, "If it were me, I would never do such a thing." She added, her expression fierce, "Go ahead, bring your mercenaries, do whatever you want. Go and liquidate other shops too." Nettie, hearing her words, exclaimed in admiration, "Wow, the owner is so cool." Vaslak, panicked, turned to Metzer. "Duke, if she does this, even the miners will demand a raise. Can you accept that?" Metzer smiled. "If that's the case, don't worry, I'm prepared. An additional 40%. He smiled smugly. Alicia thought in alarm. Since when? Even Vaslak was taken aback by his words. Metzer walked towards Vaslak, gripping his shoulder tightly. He said, his expression grim, "No matter what you say, I won't change my mind." His eyes blazing with fury, he continued, "If you ever come here again and threaten this miss, be prepared to face the consequences." Vaslak was too frightened to utter another word. Seeing his expression, Metzer smiled. "Please leave." The scene shifted to outside Revivera. Inside, Alicia collapsed to the floor, trembling with fear. Seeing her state, Metzer rushed to her side. "Are you all right?" Angie and Nettie, also seeing her condition, rushed over, crying out, "Owner!" Alicia, touched by their concern, Alicia placed a trembling hand over her heart. I'm fine," Nettie said worriedly. "Owner, your hands are shaking." Alicia rubbed her hands, thinking, it's probably because I've never been so assertive before. Angie also approached her, calling out, "Owner." However, before he could finish, someone said, "You must have been through a lot." It was Metzer, gently helping Alicia to her feet. He asked repeatedly, his voice filled with concern, "Are you hurt? Are you all right?" Alicia smiled. "I'm fine, but I'm sorry you had to go through that because of me, Duke." Seeing someone else attending to Alicia, Angie quietly withdrew his hand. Before he could feel too disheartened, Alicia turned to him and said, "I also want to apologize to Angie and Nettie." Nettie, tears welling in her eyes, said, "Why are you apologizing? That nasty Marquis should be the one apologizing." Angie shook his head. The owner did nothing wrong. Comforted by their words, Alicia smiled. "Thank you, everyone." She turned to Metzer, her voice filled with gratitude. "Duke, I didn't expect you to do that. Thank you so much." Metzer blushed. "If it's your problem, it's my problem." Angie, observing his concern for Alicia, fell into deep thought. Metzer approached him. "You're Angie, right? Sorry for the late introduction. I'm Metzer, Miss Hambin's business partner." Angie bowed. "Yes, hello, Duke. I'm Angie." Metzer said thoughtfully, "To be able to stand against the Marquis and those mercenaries, you're quite capable." Angie replied humbly, "No, I'm just a regular employee." Metzer chuckled. "Don't be so modest." He extended his hand. "Miss Hambin's people are my people." Angie said. You don't have to be so polite to me. I'm just a commoner. Metzger considered his words, then said awkwardly, well, it's our first meeting. I can't be too casual or disrespectful. Alicia, watching this exchange, thought these two aren't making the best first impressions on each other. Tried to ease the tension, she asked, by the way, Duke, why did you come here today? Metzger smiled. I recall you telling me I could visit your shop anytime. He then glanced at the hammer. I didn't expect you to be going through something like this. Alicia replied, flustered. Thanks to you, Duke, my business is flourishing. Thank you so much. Metzger said, I should have come sooner. He continued earnestly, if I ever encounter someone like him again in the future, I'll certainly sever ties. Alicia looked at him with warmth and affection. Metzger continued, actually, I've been thinking about this. He gave a thumbs up, then pointed at Nettie. This one looks appealing. Nettie's face paled. What do you mean? Metzger pointed towards something, smiling as he gestured forward. That one has been catching my eye. Nettie, thinking she should be scared, stammered, what? She then turned to her right and saw something. Metzger was referring to the jewelry display case. Alicia stepped forward excitedly. These are our featured products. Metzger exclaimed, magnificent. Who designed these? Looking at the jewelry, Alicia replied, basically the goldsmiths. Mr. Helen collects the goldsmith designs, and I choose from them. Then I send my favorite designs to him, and they come to the shop as crafts. Metzger smiled. That's a systematic approach. Touching the jewelry display case, he continued, especially the harmony of colors. It makes them really stand out. He pointed at a necklace. This ruby, moonstone, and emerald one. Alicia picked up the necklace. What if we reversed the color combination and the shape? She said excitedly, I just thought of it. Of course, it stands out as it is now, but I want to give it a fresh feel. Metzger watched the necklace as she spoke, a pleased expression on his face. He was impressed by her idea. Holding the necklace, he said, I knew you had a good eye, but I didn't expect it to be this good. Alicia smiled, thinking in my past life this was quite popular. But she said, whether it's beautiful also depends on the craftsman's skill. Metzger chuckled. This is a true masterpiece, a combination of the craftsman's skill and Miss Hamden's artistic eye. Nettie added excitedly, we also have birthstone gems, Duke. Metzger asked, birthstone gems? Alicia explained, yes, it's a special display where you can choose stones that match your birth month. She looked towards the display case. For example, January is garnet, February is amethyst, and December is turquoise. Nettie continued excitedly, picking up a glittering necklace. If you choose a birthstone, you can also choose your own design. We can make it into a necklace or a bracelet. Angie added, birthstones also have various meanings depending on the type of stone, and this product is better as a gift for lovers, family, or friends and wear yourself. Alicia asked excitedly, could you help us promote this product? She turned to Angie and Nettie. Our sales force is our business partner. Metzger raised his hands. This is the first time I've seen such a unique business approach. The customers will surely be thrilled. Alicia thought to herself, birthstones were popular in my past life, but has that been proven here? Seeing her lost in thought, Metzger said, it's a shame more people don't know about this wonderful shop. It's a pity I came alone today. Alicia smiled, thinking business people are all the same. Then she said brightly, actually, I've been thinking about business collaborations. She mused, the Duke is a major gemstone supplier, so he must be aware of my plans, right? I'm considering opening more branches under the Reviver name and receiving commissions from products sold elsewhere under the Reviver brand. She continued excitedly, Reviver 2, Reviver 3, and even more. However, upon hearing this, Metzger fell into deep thought. Seeing his expression, Alicia called out worriedly, Dupe! Metzger clenched his fists. Miss! Then his face broke into a brilliant smile. You've given me too many surprises today. It's amazing that you're so forward-thinking. Nettie said excitedly, it's amazing, right? Because Miss is so talented. Alicia smiled modestly. Oh, it's nothing. The problem now is how to promote it, she thought. So this is what it feels like to be praised for giving a cheat answer. Before she could finish her thought, he said, Mississippi, he continued enthusiastically. When promoting the products, feel free to mention my name if you think it will help. Alicia replied happily, thank you, Duke. She thought, using Duke Metzger's gems will also improve the quality of the products. He said cheerfully, as a business partner, please let us know if you have any requests. Alicia bowed. It's our honor to work with someone like you, Duke. She wondered, am I really this favored? Seeing her like this, Metzger said, do as you please. I don't even know if this can be called consideration anymore. Nettie turned to Angie excitedly. It's wonderful that they get along so well, going from business partners to friends, isn't it? Angie simply replied, After saying that, his expression turned somber. Some time passed, and the Duke, having spent a considerable amount of time in their shop, cheerfully grasped the doorknob. "Well then, I'll take my leave." Alicia replied, "Thank you, Duke." Metzer opened the door and stepped out. The scene shifted back inside the jewelry store, where Alicia watched her employees working. Lost in thought, she mused with a melancholic expression. Angie worked hard today, too. She approached Angie, who asked, "What's wrong, owner?" She replied, "Would you like to have dinner together tonight?" Angie asked, surprised me. She smiled gently. "You worked hard today, so I wanted to treat you to a meal." Angie smiled. "Then I'd be delighted." Overhearing their conversation, Nettie said excitedly, "Then we can have delicious food tonight, right?" Alicia laughed. "That's right. Let's have dinner together." The scene transitioned to Alicia's residence. Seeing Nettie and Angie enter, she said, "Thank you for coming today." She continued cheerfully, "Nettie, I'll be in the kitchen for a bit. Angie, please make yourself comfortable." They both replied, "Okay." The scene shifted to the kitchen, where a pot of soup was simmering and other dishes were being prepared. Alicia entered the kitchen, where someone was preparing the meal. Seeing her enter, the person turned and smiled. "Oh, hello, Mississippi. You're already here." Alicia replied, "I came a little early because I have guests today." She continued excitedly, "The guests will be hungry, so please prepare a little more food today." The cook chuckled. "Don't worry, Mississippi. Leave it to me." Time passed, and the food was ready, beautifully arranged on the table. Everything looked perfect. Everyone exclaimed, "Amazing." Alicia gestured towards the cook. "This is what the cook prepared for us. So let's all enjoy this wonderful meal." Nettie declared enthusiastically, "I certainly will." Angie added, "Thank you for the hospitality." Nettie then took a large bite of beef, savoring the tender meat. Alicia picked up a piece of fruit and tasted it. Angie dipped his bread into the rich sauce. Alicia set down her glass. Angie looked up. "Yes, owner." Her voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you so much for today. If it weren't for you, the shop would have suffered a great loss." Nettie added, "That's right. It's so great to have Angie around." Alicia said, "Thanks to you, Nettie and I were safe." Angie said humbly, "No, it was my duty." "You don't have to thank me so much, owner." His eyes darkened slightly as he continued, "I'm a servant, so no matter what happens, I'll put myself at risk. I can't allow anyone to harm my master." Alicia smiled. "Even so, it's rare to see someone stand up so bravely in front of someone of higher status, like the Marquis." Angie asked thoughtfully, "Just because someone is of high status, should we tiptoe around them?" Nettie spoke up. "Even in front of Marquis Lack or Duke Metzer, Angie always considers what's fair for our shop." Alicia thought to herself, "Now that I think about it, I felt a bit small when I first met the Earl's daughter." She looked back at Angie, thinking, yet he didn't show any signs of awkwardness or discomfort. Seeing Angie clench his fist, Nettie asked, "Are you dissatisfied with your magic skills?" Alicia smiled. "Today I witnessed Angie as a truly talented mage." Angie scratched his head awkwardly. "It's nothing special. Other mages can do it too." Alicia immediately replied, "But not everyone can reach that level." Both Alicia and Nettie gave him a thumbs up. "That was amazing." Angie froze for a moment. Then his face darkened, and he lowered his head. Alicia and Nettie exclaimed, "Angie." However, he wasn't upset, but rather shy from their praise. Alicia thought, "He's completely blushing." She chuckled. "So Angie's weakness is getting shy when praised." Angie mumbled, "I've never been praised like this before." Alicia asked, "Really? I've never seen anyone as strong as you, Angie." He replied, "I don't know, it's just that if someday I could become a reliable bodyguard for Master, that would be great." Nettie cheerfully held up a finger. "Being responsible and kind are bonus points." Angie suddenly burst into laughter, unable to stop. The room filled with cheerful laughter as they continued to eat, drink, and chat. The scene transitioned to another room. Alicia looked down at the paper in her hand, thinking exasperatedly, "How should I write this?" With a frustrated expression, she thought, "Recruiting shop owners is more complicated than recruiting employees." She continued to ponder. Although a large number of artisans have been secured, it's practically become a monopoly on the supply of processed jewelry. However, that's only temporary. She told herself, another company will recruit new artisans, or my situation will change when I bring in talent from other regions. Until then, I need to persuade as many shop owners as possible. She told herself firmly, it has to be done under the Reviver brand. Finally, she finished writing the recruitment notice, but her face showed no joy, only worry and contemplation. Nettie watched her. Alicia finished her work and closed her notebook. Seeing this, Nettie hurried to her side. She said excitedly, "The Duke is such a good person. Miss should consider using this to help promote the shop." Alicia smiled. "That's right. Utilizing influential people is important." Nettie sat down and looked at the papers. "Are you writing something to promote the shop?" Alicia picked up a sheet. "Read this for me. I'm not very good at writing." Nettie took the paper and read it carefully. She placed the paper on the table. "Miss, this..." Alicia waited anxiously for Nettie to continue. Nettie said, "I have a few suggestions." Alicia asked, "What are your thoughts?" Nettie thought for a moment before saying, "In this part, instead of saying Revivra has incredibly attractive products, it would be better to shorten it. Also, if you briefly mention some of our products below, I think it will attract more attention." Alicia smiled. "That's a good idea, Nettie." Nettie continued, "We need to add the logo and explain it. You also said that creating a brand image is very important." Alicia smiled proudly, thinking she noticed something I didn't even see. Looking at Nettie, she thought, "I didn't know you had such talent, even though you've served me all your life." Noticing Alicia staring at her while reading, Nettie looked back in surprise. They then discussed everything cheerfully. Suddenly, Nettie asked, "Did I go off topic again?" Alicia smiled. "Not at all. You're better than me." Nettie exclaimed in a fluster, "Miss, what are you saying?" Seeing her panic, Alicia placed a hand on her shoulder, her expression serious. "You really are amazing. I mean it. You saw what I didn't, and that really puts my mind at ease." Nettie teared up, touched by her words. "Miss," Alicia said thoughtfully, "so we need to change our advertising strategy a bit." Hearing this, Nettie asked in confusion, "Didn't you say the current strategy was good?" A melancholic look crossed her face. "Yes, but it won't last long." As she spoke, she thought, even without social media, I can still see the impact of word of mouth, but there are significant limitations. Looking at the recruitment notice, she told herself, to survive, just as Nettie said, the brand has to leave a strong impression on consumers. With this thought, Alicia sighed. "We can't think of any good ideas right now." Hearing this, Nettie said cheerfully, "Let's do our best, Mississippi." Before they could finish speaking, however, someone entered the room. It was the cook, holding a tray with a bright smile. "My ladies, have some refreshments. Food is the fuel for the body." On the tray were 2 slices of what looked like delicious chocolate cake and 2 cups of tea. Seeing this, Alicia stammered, "Thank you." At the sight of such delicious cake, Nettie happily ran to the cook and said, "Thank you." Watching this, Alicia asked in confusion, "But eating cake at this hour?" Hearing this, Nettie turned around and replied with a smile, "I specifically asked them to make it just now." Then, she offered the cake to Alicia. "Miss, please have some. It will help you come up with good ideas." Seeing this, Alicia said worriedly, "But eating this at this hour will make me gain weight." Nettie smiled. "What does a few extra kilos matter? You're still slim, so it's all right." Poking a raspberry with her fork, she continued, "Come on, miss, please have some." Although Alicia heard her, she worried and hesitated for a long time. With an annoyed expression, she thought, "Why am I still hung up on gaining weight?" Recalling the past, she angrily told herself, "That's right, it's because in the past, I wanted to prove to that trash." In the past, he had cruelly told her that she was getting fat because she ate like a pig. Hearing this, Alicia was startled, but she didn't dare to protest and just endured it. She always lowered her head and stopped eating any further. Seeing her face darken, Nettie said worriedly, "Miss," however, before she could finish, Alicia dug her fork into the cake. Then, she opened her mouth wide and ate, thinking, "Now I don't have to hold my stomach in for anyone." Seeing her eat with such relish, a happy smile bloomed on Nettie's face. Then, she too, like Alicia, took a large bite of the cake. As they ate, they happily thought, "This is so good." Alicia smiled. "This cake is delicious." Nettie replied with a smile, "If our cook says it's good, then it really is good." Time flew by, and the scene transitioned to a mansion the next morning. Alicia bowed her head. "Your Highness, greetings." Then, she slowly raised her head and looked forward solemnly. Standing before her was none other than the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince smiled at her. Please have a seat. Hearing this, Alicia slowly walked to the chair, then sat down, lowering her head. The Crown Prince said, the invitation might have been a bit sudden, but thank you for coming. It must have been a long journey. Hearing this, Alicia thoughtfully replied, not at all. I should be the one thanking your highness for the invitation. The Crown Prince reached for the teapot. The tea is quite good. Would you care for some? Alicia remained silent for a long moment. Then, the Crown Prince poured her a cup. Seeing this, Alicia was taken aback, thinking the Crown Prince is pouring tea for me himself. The thought startled her. Your Highness, she exclaimed, flustered. She continued, her voice laced with panic. How can I let someone of such noble standing? Petit forme, she worried. This is a strict society. Normally, this is a task for servants or those of lower standing. What is he thinking? Seeing this, a maid hurried forward. Allow me. However, hearing this, the Crown Prince waved his hand dismissively. It's quite all right. The maid looked surprised. He glanced down at the teapot in his hand. As you said, it is indeed rare for a Crown Prince to pour tea, but it's because I wanted you to enjoy the tea comfortably. Alicia gave an awkward laugh. Yes, thank you, Your Highness. He then continued pouring the tea he had started. Watching her lift the cup, he said, let us enjoy this together. At his words, Alicia took a sip, then smiled, a happy expression spreading across her face. It's delicious, thank you. She thought, I don't know about His Highness, but I genuinely find this tea quite exquisite. After finishing her sip, she carefully placed the teacup back down. Then, in a thoughtful voice, she began, Your Highness, her expression turning serious. I would like to discuss my business with you. Hearing this, the Crown Prince gave a small smile. Alicia, having barely spoken a sentence, thought worriedly, it's unreasonable for two people who are neither familiar nor close to prolong their interaction. I should just get straight to the point. The Crown Prince asked thoughtfully, you wish to get straight to the point? He continued, very well, but I have something to say first. Hearing this, Alicia thought anxiously, what does he want to say? Then, silence fell over the room for a long moment. Finally, the Crown Prince spoke thoughtfully. I wish to apologize for my rudeness the last time we met. Alicia was so surprised she couldn't speak. The Crown Prince continued, I disrespected you, attempting to force my desires upon you. He said, because I did not conduct myself appropriately, you must have felt offended. Alicia thought, astonished, he seems like a completely different person. I never thought he would apologize to me so sincerely. Seeing her surprised expression, the Crown Prince chuckled. You seem quite taken aback. Alicia quickly raised her hand. No, not at all. Hearing this, he sighed and continued. Actually, after hearing about the incident, my sister gave me quite the scolding. He then recalled his sister's angry words. You were incredibly rude. Don't expect anyone to take a liking to you in this lifetime. Even a Crown Prince was helpless against his sister. The Crown Prince said thoughtfully, in any case, I truly wanted to apologize. I also have a proposition. Then time flew by. 3 days later, all the employees of Revivro were gathered together. Seeing this, everyone asked, what's going on? She smiled in response. It's been a while since we've all been together like this. Helen said, hello everyone. I know you're all busy, but I have some urgent news to announce, so I'll tell you now. Looking at all the workers before her, she continued, please pay attention. Then, looking towards the sky, she declared, this is good news. She continued, we're going to have a new distribution location. The employees chattered excitedly amongst themselves, smiles lighting up their faces. A new supplier? Are we about to get rich? They turned to Alicia expectantly. So where is it? Alicia smiled. The royal palace. The scene flashed back to 3 days prior. The Crown Prince smiled. I'd like to commission you to create jewelry for the royal family. Alicia gasped. Your Highness. Her face a mask of bewilderment. She stammered. Are you serious? Thinking of the people in the palace, he continued. I showed everyone the jewelry from your shop, and they all adored it. Alicia thought, elated, the apology was one thing, but isn't this too much? Still, being in charge of crafting pieces for the royal family will be incredible publicity. Seeing her smile, the Crown Prince smiled as well. You seem much happier when talking business. Lowering her head, she replied, I still can't believe I've received such a favor. The Crown Prince smiled. This is proof of the quality of your shop's products, that they've earned the royal family's recognition. He then extended his hand. If you agree, I'll entrust you with this task. He continued, this is not a favor, nor is it an apology. Alicia exclaimed, entrust me. The Crown Prince said cheerfully, ah yes. For the next 3 months, I will only order the royal family supplies from Revivera. Don't you think this is a good opportunity for your business? Alicia thought, panicked. This isn't just a good opportunity. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Overwhelmed with happiness, she let out a small sigh. Thank you, Your Highness, for entrusting me with this task. I will certainly fulfill my duties to the best of my ability. The Crown Prince smiled. That's wonderful. Then, with a chuckle, he added, I've noticed you've been quite busy lately, so I thought you might decline my offer. Hearing this, she thought in a panic, who would dare refuse a favor from the royal family? Only a fool would. She coughed, regaining her composure. Then, with a gentle, cheerful smile, she said, I will certainly do my utmost. The Crown Prince blushed shyly and nodded. The scene shifted to another luxurious room within the royal palace. A piece of special, elaborately decorated silk lay on the table. Princess Selena sat quietly in an armchair, reading a book. Someone approached and opened the door to her room. She looked up to see who it was. Brother, she said, a smile gracing her lips. The Crown Prince said, Selena, still reading? Looking at her brother's happy face, she closed her book and asked, Why do you look so pleased? The Crown Prince beamed. She accepted, he said cheerfully. Hearing this, Selena exclaimed joyfully, Wonderful. Then we'll have lots of beautiful, high-quality items from now on. I really love Revivera's pieces. The Crown Prince sighed. Yes, I was a little worried she wouldn't agree at first, but thankfully, she accepted the request. He continued, I wanted to tell her to take her time and not worry about deadlines. But I'm not the only one who gets a say. He chuckled. So now I leave this to you. The princess thought, concerned, my brother doesn't usually worry about these things. Still, having a dedicated jewelry supplier is a good thing. He said, I think we'll need to have a few meetings with the shop owner to discuss the types of jewelry we want to order. The princess replied, All right, I understand. However, she paused as she said this, thinking, lifting her head in surprise. She thought, why does he look so happy? I feel like he just successfully confessed to someone. Seeing his sister's suspicious expression, the Crown Prince was momentarily speechless. Then, he offered an excuse. Your aesthetic sense is better than mine, so it's best you look over the products, right? Selena considered this for a long moment, not replying. Then, in a slightly sad tone, she said, All right, I understand. Time passed, and the scene shifted to a bustling street. Alicia addressed the workers gathered before her. The contract with the royal family is for 3 months. If they're satisfied, it's highly likely they'll continue to entrust us with this responsibility. Looking at the workers, dust clinging to their clothes from their labors, she continued, I know everyone has always done their best, but crafting pieces for the palace demands even greater care and dedication. I expect nothing less from each of you. Finishing her sentence, she raised her index finger, her voice firm and resolute. I believe you will all be richly rewarded. Hearing such encouragement, coupled with the promise of recompense, the workers were filled with a mixture of joy and motivation. Leave it to us, they chorused. Helen, too, looked at Alicia. I'll also do everything in my power. Alicia smiled, her expression radiating complete trust in them. However, before her joy could fully bloom, one of the workers slowly approached. He seemed bewildered, unsure of how to begin. Alicia smiled gently. What is it? Did you want to say something? The worker stammered, well, however. He trailed off, the unfinished sentence hanging in the air as he struggled to find the right words. Alicia waited patiently. The worker finally managed, It's such an honor. Hearing the half-formed phrase, Alicia's face lit up. She had guessed what he wanted to say. He continued, his voice a mixture of awe and trepidation. The Queen and Emperor will wear the jewelry we crafted with our own hands. Can I really do this? Alicia thought with a pang of concern. This isn't like making items for the upper class. Looking at the workers before her, she thought, this is crafting for the royal family of this country, so it feels completely different. She quickly crossed the room to the worker, taking his hands in hers. Me too. I'm honored to be working alongside all of you on such a meaningful project. I am truly overjoyed. The worker's voice was thick with emotion. As a craftsman, I'm incredibly proud to be working with you. He continued, Thank you for creating such a wonderful environment where we can create splendid and precious jewelry. I'm truly happy. Alicia continued, As for the royal family's wishes, Revivera will dedicate itself to crafting jewelry for everyone. Deeply moved, Helen said, You've changed the lives of us workers. Thank you so much. Another worker, tears welling in his eyes, added, "No more worries about inheritance issues. No one needs to work themselves to death anymore. I'll never forget this kindness." Another worker chimed in, "I truly love my work, even though so many sad things have happened in the past." Hearing these heartfelt words, Alicia's own eyes filled with tears. "No," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I owe it all to each and every one of you." She continued, "I want to thank you all as well." Looking at the workers before her, a cheerful smile brightened her face. "Thanks to all of you, my dream has come true." She beamed. "Let's work hard together." "Yes," the workers replied in unison. Clasping her hands together, Alicia thought, "Will everyone be able to make jewelry for me for a long time? Or stay by my side for a long time? Even so, I'm determined to protect everyone." The scene then shifted to Alicia's residence. Alicia and Nettie were studying in a room. Looking at the notice, she thought, franchise recruitment notice effective immediately. The collaboration with the Lumais family and the 3-month contract with the royal family have caused a huge wave of public opinion. Less than a week after advertising in the newspaper, letters requesting participation in the franchise business had piled up, dozens in all. Questions about the possibility of developing the Reviver brand in the suburbs of the capital were also pouring in. She picked up a seal bearing the image of a swan and stamped it onto the documents on the table. "It's become a verified brand," she thought happily. Seeing her stamp the documents, Nettie breathed a sigh of relief. Then, turning to Alicia, she said, "I think I'm going to be busy for a while." "Of course," Alicia replied cheerfully. Looking at the documents in her hand, she continued, "Whether it's signing partnership agreements or hiring lawyers, I think the work should be completed much faster now." She turned to Nettie, her voice bright. "We might even be hiring more people soon." Nettie responded with delight. "It's like a dream. I'm so happy it's grown to this extent." Seeing Nettie's joy, Alicia smiled radiantly. Nettie quickly picked up a letter, but before her joy could fully express itself, her eyes caught a line of very small writing at the bottom. Seeing the words, Nettie's face became a mask of astonishment, rendering her speechless. Her cheerful expression faded, replaced by a shadow of apprehension. "Teach this," she stammered. Alicia, alarmed, asked, "What is it, Nettie?" Nettie's voice was tinged with disappointment. "This isn't an inquiry from a merchant, Mississippi." As she spoke, her hand trembled, clutching the letter tightly. Alicia turned, her brow furrowed. "Then what is it?" Nettie held out the letter. "It's from Marquis LaCroix." Alicia quickly took the letter, her own face darkening. A thoughtful expression settled upon her features. "When Duke Lumais spoke so decisively before, I thought there would be no further obligations. What is he planning now?" Handing the letter back to Nettie, Alicia asked, "What does he write?" Nettie replied, "Please wait a moment." A thoughtful expression crossed her face as she considered the contents. "He wishes to formally meet with you, Mississippi." Then, picturing LaCroix's likely panic state as he penned the letter, she read aloud, "I sincerely apologize for my previous behavior. I will not cause any further trouble, so I hope Miss Hamden will consent to meet with me." Alicia's brow furrowed deeper as she listened. "Is he serious? I'm still suspicious." Nettie continued reading, "P.S. If you don't believe me, may I send a carriage for you?" Alicia considered this. "Although my relationship with the Marquis is difficult, if I turn my back on the LaCroix family, it won't be good for other relationships either." She tapped her finger against the table, lost in thought. "He simply wants to meet." However, before she could finish her thought, Nettie spoke. "Miss," she began, a cheerful expression brightening her face. "We have Angie. Don't you think Angie would be more reliable than a bodyguard?" Alicia sighed. "She must be very busy these days. We can't overwork her." Hearing this, Nettie's face fell. A worried expression creased her brow. Who could subdue that Marquis, then? Is there anyone else? Then a thought struck her. What about Master Lumais? Alicia's voice was tinged with sadness. "He's already helped me so much." She fell silent for a long moment, deep in thought. However, her expression quickly became resolute. "Have him meet me in the study." "Not where the Marquis suggested." Hearing this, Nettie asked curiously, "Why there?" "Our study." A moment later, the scene finally shifted to a truly luxurious study. Nettie's eyes sparkled as she took in the room. "The study is finished," she exclaimed. Alicia smiled. "I recall you came here once when we signed the contract. This isn't your first time, is it?" Nettie replied, "Yes, that's right." Alicia chuckled. "It was much gloomier before, but now it truly looks like a study." As she spoke, a thought crossed her mind. Even that Marquis wrote something similar in his letter. Then, a pensive expression settled upon her features. "He certainly won't come to cause me trouble here." With that thought, Alicia stepped forward. Thank you for looking after the shop. I think having the study prepared will make my work much easier. Looking around, she continued, now that this is no longer our shared workspace, let's have a look around. Alicia placed her hand on a desk. You'll work here from now on, she continued, because this is your space. Nettie's face lit up with joy. So there's a place just for me? She asked, her voice filled with determination. Alicia replied, yes. I'll work hard. Alicia then said, let's begin today's most important agenda. Okay, Nettie responded brightly. However, after hearing the entire sentence, she lowered her head, a thoughtful expression on her face. Looking at the clock before her, she thought, the Marquis will be here in an hour. With that thought, she anxiously turned, her gaze lifting worriedly to the sun. Now what should I do? Finally, an hour passed. Nettie and Alicia sat nervously in their chairs. Suddenly, a knock echoed through the room. Alicia's head snapped up, a flicker of alarm in her eyes. Nervously clutching her skirt, she called, come in. The person who entered was none other than Marquis LaCroix. He looked at her pensively, a worried expression etched on his face, and remained silent for a moment. Then, as if remembering his manners, he offered a shallow bow. Alicia spoke first. I trust you find the seat comfortable. LaCroix, seemingly embarrassed, stammered, ah yes. Fortunately, Alicia replied smoothly. Nettie, observing the exchange thoughtfully, brought out a tea tray. LaCroix watched her with a confused expression. Looking at Nettie, he asked, is she his servant? Alicia turned, a hint of steel in her voice. No, this is Nettie, my assistant. She also acts as the general manager. Realizing his blunder, LaCroix stammered, my apologies. Alicia regarded LaCroix with a thoughtful gaze. His attitude is completely different from before. She picked up her teacup. This tea is best enjoyed while it's hot. Would you care for some? LaCroix, picking up his own cup, replied nervously, I'll try some. The scene shifted to a moment later. He was pouring tea from the pot into his cup. Before he could take a sip, Alicia spoke. May I ask why you're here? The question seemed to startle him, rendering him momentarily speechless. Setting down his cup, LaCroix began, first, I thank you, Miss Hamden, for responding to my request. He continued, a worried expression still clinging to his features. Today, I'm simply here to talk. Alicia pondered his words. This is the power of the Lumais family. He then spoke pensively. To be honest, I came with a small request. Alicia raised an eyebrow. A request. He was so chaotic before, and now he's asking a favor. How strange. Seeing the worried expression on Alicia's face, Nettie whispered, Miss, could you listen to me for a moment? Alicia smiled reassuringly at Nettie, indicating that she was fine and that Nettie needn't worry. LaCroix, appearing extremely anxious, stammered, before I make my request, I would like to apologize. He nervously clasped his hands. I sincerely apologize for my previous cruel behavior, and I apologize from the bottom of my heart for everything I've done. He continued, his voice still trembling slightly. If I need to find an excuse, if labor costs increase, we may have to close down the business. So it seemed like extreme action. Alicia thought, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. A man who placed no value on the lives of others his whole life ends up like this. With mixed feelings, she decided to let it go. Setting down her teacup, she asked, a questioning expression on her face, after your apology, Marquis, I'm even more curious about what your next request could be. At her words, his face brightened slightly. About that, I was hoping you could adjust the wages. I'm not suggesting an increase, but the number, however, before he could finish, she interrupted. Yes. He stopped abruptly, alarmed by her single word. Now extremely frightened, he anxiously continued. If this happens, I might go bankrupt, and if the company is transferred, there will be huge losses. He added, his voice laced with desperation. And if this business collapses, our family will fall with it. Alicia watched him thoughtfully, remaining silent. If he hadn't severed ties with the Lumais family, this man certainly wouldn't have anything to apologize for. Someday, I too will be respected through my own strength. Finally, she spoke. Is there any way for you, Marquis, to avoid damage at an ideal level? He stared at her alarmed. What? A pensive expression settled on her face, and a small smile played on her lips. How about selling your company, Marquis? Nettie, alarmed, turned sharply. Miss! The Marquis, too, was stunned into silence, seemingly too shocked to speak. Alicia continued, her smile unwavering. I'll buy your company. LaCroix stammered, alarm evident in his eyes. He anxiously continued, "If I sell the company under these circumstances, however," but before he could finish, she cut him off. "Don't misunderstand. I would never ask you to give it to me at a cheap price." Her expression turned serious. "I believe the current labor costs are reasonable. Lowering them again would be deceiving the craftsman. The law of diminishing wages in economics. If wages, once raised, are lowered again, there will be significant backlash from the workers. Instead," she continued, "I will take over the company so you won't incur losses. I propose this because I believe it has the potential to perform well." He stammered, well, about that." Alicia cheerfully held up 3 fingers. "For the purchase price, we will add 30% to the value for fairness." LaCroix was so shocked by her words that he was left speechless. Nettie turned, anxiety etched on her face. "Miss, that's too much." Alicia smiled. "A loss, but a valuable one." Nettie thought worriedly, "I no longer understand what Miss is thinking." Alicia smiled and continued, "That's the price of acquiring strong commercial products." With a determined glint in her eyes, she thought, "I need to expand the business sooner rather than later. Rather than launching a new game, the existing workforce and way of operating the system will be more useful." LaCroix, anxious and confused, finally found his voice. "You're saying you'll give me an additional 30%? Most are trying to cut." Alicia smiled slightly. "The Marquis thinks he'll lose money because of labor costs. But I'm different. With a little adjustment, I can pull it the way I want." Her smile widened. "I'm willing to pay more. I truly want to acquire your company, Marquis. And of course, I need to know the exact value." He responded, bewildered. "Well, first of all, that's a good offer." Alicia rose gracefully from her seat and walked to a desk in the corner of the room. Picking up a sheet of paper, she held it out. "If you're worried, I'll write you a contract. If there's proof that I've deceived you, Marquis, through an unfair deal, I'll include a clause stating that I'll be liable for legal compensation." LaCroix exclaimed, alarmed. "Can I really do that?" Alicia smiled. "Of course. I have no intention of deceiving you, Marquis. You also have to stand before the law yourself." He smiled, still slightly confused. "Well then, I'll seriously consider your offer." "How much time do you need?" she asked. He replied, "It may take 3 days." Alicia extended her hand. LaCroix, understanding her intention, extended his own. Their hands met in a firm handshake. Alicia said cheerfully, "Then we'll await positive news from you, Marquis." Time passed, and the scene shifted to early evening. AGI was pensively arranging jewelry, alone in the workshop. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. AGI looked up to see Alicia and Nettie standing outside. With a bright face, Alicia announced, "We're back." Seeing her smile, AGI stared blankly for a moment, then looked so startled he couldn't speak. With a beaming face, he finally asked, "Yes, how did it go?" The scene then shifted to a table, the 3 of them sitting together, discussing the day. "You intend to take over the shop?" AGI asked. Alicia smiled. "That's right. I plan to talk to Zealand tomorrow." AGI responded thoughtfully, "I understand. Congratulations." Nettie, seeing his reaction, said, confused, "You seem not surprised." "When I first heard about it, I was so shocked I couldn't speak." AGI replied, "I know that Miss is making a wise choice. Now that the business is growing, taking over an established shop will be more efficient." Nettie smiled. "That's right. I was surprised at first too, but Miss really has big plans for that bold move." AGI remained silent for a moment. As if in agreement, Alicia observed everything with a knowing look. "AGI understands everything without me needing to explain. I think you have a talent for business," she continued cheerfully. "You realized what I was doing just by hearing about it." AGI responded, "No, it's similar to when your own country's power grows, expanding territory by taking over other countries." Alicia's eyes lit up. "Expanding territory, that sounds interesting." AGI stared blankly for a moment. Alicia smiled. "It's the same thing." A touch of embarrassment colored AGI's cheeks. "It's not exactly the same. Anyway, I just wanted to say you made a wise decision, Mississippi." Nettie clapped her hands. "You have a unique power, like your fiery fist." A burst of laughter filled the room. Alicia continued cheerfully, "When I take over the business, I'll probably be even busier, so we'll hire more people." She thought of Nettie, always ready to assist her in everything. AGI, always working hard and protecting the shop. And Zealand, always cheerful and making everyone laugh. "I've been able to do this because of everyone here," she said warmly. AGI shook his head. "No, it's because of you leading us." Alicia smiled. "Let's have fun working together from now on, AGI." She extended her hand. AGI blushed, a mixture of embarrassment and gratitude warming his face. He reached out and took Alicia's hand. Nettie said cheerfully. Let's all work hard together. Time passed, and the scene shifted to nighttime. Alicia stood outside the shop, addressing AGI. Good work today. See you tomorrow. AGI bowed his head in farewell and walked away. I'll be even busier in the future, Alicia thought, but I still need to be cautious. The scene then shifted to 3 days later. Alicia was sitting at her desk, working diligently, when someone entered. It was Marquis LaCroix. Seeing him, Alicia rose cheerfully. Hello, Marquis. LaCroix responded thoughtfully. Yes, I've made my decision. The scene shifted to a moment later, with everyone sitting together, discussing business. Alicia spoke first. Thank you. I didn't expect you to accept my offer, but thanks to your approval, we were able to reach a good agreement. Looking at the documents spread before her, she asked, Did you bring the documents I requested? LaCroix handed her a stack of papers. I brought everything I know. Alicia received the documents and began to check them. I requested a lot of data, but you've organized it so neatly, he replied. This is the data needed to assess our shop's value. Please take your time reviewing it. Nettie, can you look at this for me? She asked. Nettie took the documents. Yes, Mississippi. A pensive expression settled on Nettie's face as she reviewed the papers. Ah, so that's why he strongly opposed the wage increase. The company's current operating margin is about 5%. If operating with the wages misset, the profit margin will drop to 3%. If you add taxes and interest expenses, the profit margin will decrease significantly. After checking the documents, Nettie continued, Based on the information you provided, the shop's current value is around 8 billion deniets. Hearing this figure, LaCroix's face darkened. Alicia continued, but we also need to reappraise it. It's difficult to completely trust this number. It's been 5 years. The shop's value could have changed. LaCroix responded, Is that so? Alicia replied, Don't worry about the cost. I'll request a separate evaluation. She thoughtfully looked over the documents for a moment. Then her face lit up as she noticed something. Marquis, she said, there's one more issue. He replied, Yes, please feel free. Alicia looked at the documents with a worried expression, then pulled one out from the stack. Watching the Marquis's face darken, she continued, Can you show me the company's list of main clients? She hesitated. I know it's a trade secret, but since I'll be taking over the shop, could you share it with me now? LaCroix smiled. I don't know that. Alicia looked at the documents in her hand. You don't have data on that part? LaCroix smiled faintly. If I look, I can find it. But Alicia understood his intentions. Her face clouded. How much do you want? She asked directly. He laughed, a sound that grated on her nerves. I don't have a specific number. A sly expression slid across his face. Why don't you make an offer? The price you think is most reasonable. He watched Alicia, a flicker of apprehension in her eyes, and laughed again. You're very generous. The room fell silent. Alicia frowned. He says I'm generous, but he's asking for even more money. Seeing her tension, LaCroix chuckled. I didn't mean to make you nervous. Don't misunderstand. Alicia forced a smile, her mind racing. If I say no now, will he think I'm cheap and backing down? The thought of the Marquis's sly maneuvering fueled her frustration. Even if the deal goes smoothly, he's still a businessman, she thought angrily. Nettie, witnessing the tense exchange, worried silently. If she gives him another 30%, she'll have paid over 10 billion deniets. How much more does he want? Alicia wondered irritably. What should I do now? Then, a thought struck her, and her face brightened. Clutching the documents, she thought, that's right, in times like these, I need to take risks. With a sigh, she said, Unfortunately, LaCroix's eyes widened with anxiety. What's wrong? Alicia continued, her voice steady. I don't have any more money to pay extra. The price I offered was the best I could do. Miss Hamden, he exclaimed in alarm. Alicia pressed on, but that's my problem. Feigning sadness, she said, if the price isn't enough to properly value the shop and your data, I won't force you to sell it to me. As she finished, she offered the documents back to him. LaCroix stared at her, speechless with shock. Alicia smiled. So, it's better for you to continue running the shop. With no other choice, she watched him with sly eyes, waiting to see his next move. Seeing her resolve, he stammered. Miss Hamden, he said anxiously, I understand your current situation. It's not unacceptable. I'll agree to that amount. Alicia, seeing her gamble pay off, thought triumphantly, perfect. Why did you actually agree to the amount I offered? She asked, her voice laced with curiosity. He chuckled, recovering his composure. It once belonged to our families. I should do everything I can to help it continue to thrive. Hearing this, Alicia turned to Nettie and winked, signaling her success. Nettie smiled and gave a thumbs up in return. Alicia smiled. I'm deeply grateful for your generosity, marquee. He's given in, so I should reciprocate a bit to show my gratitude. I'll pay everything in cash, she declared. At the word cash, LaCroix's face brightened. Really? That's wonderful, he exclaimed. By the way, Alicia continued, I'd like to hire GN's employees at their current positions. I'd like to meet them soon. He replied, I've already informed the manager, and the merger will happen soon. Alicia stood up. I'll send the remaining paperwork to the lawyer. She walked towards him, each step measured and deliberate. With a triumphant smile, she extended her hand. LaCroix understood and stood up, extending his own. They shook hands once again, sealing the deal. I hope we'll have a good partnership, Miss Hamden, he said smoothly. A surge of anger, quickly suppressed, coursed through Alicia. She imagined him inwardly cursing her while feigning pleasantries. With a determined expression, she thought, no matter what, I will succeed. The thought of her ex-husband fueled her resolve. I have to succeed so that no one can look down on me again. Thinking of Duke Landmetzer and the Crown Prince, she solidified her determination. I must stand on my own, without borrowing the names of the Duke or the Crown Prince. The scene lingered on their clasped hands for a moment. Nettie, witnessing the finality of the agreement, clapped her hands joyfully in celebration. The scene then shifted to the outside. Alicia's life had become even busier. She stood in front of a building. Looking at the lawyer before her, Alicia thought, we've received the new valuation of the company's worth. She had hired her own lawyer to review and organize the documents. Now, they were meeting with the Marquis's lawyer to finalize all the procedures. Smiling, Alicia picked up her pen and signed the contract. Gazing at the signed document, she thought with satisfaction, the merger between Livibio and GN is finally complete. A week passed. Alicia called everyone to gather in her room. It's a pleasure to meet you all, she said cheerfully. The employees, intimidated by her presence, remained silent. At GN, how was the work distributed? She asked, addressing the group. One employee sighed. There wasn't really any division of labor. Work was just given to whoever wasn't busy. Alicia brought her hands to her head in frustration. Because of that randomness, I guess I can't ask for professionalism or a proper structure now. Clenching her fists with determination, she thought, we'll build it up step by step, starting from scratch. With a sigh, she said thoughtfully, all right then, we'll start by dividing the work. She offered a gentle smile to the new employees. They simply stared back at her in silence. Alicia continued cheerfully. At Livibio, we'll operate in a new way. One employee asked, surprised, in a new way? Alicia turned to a stack of documents beside her. I know it might be difficult for everyone to grasp their tasks immediately, so I prepared some materials, she said brightly. Holding out the documents, she said, would you like to take a look? Everyone took the documents and began to read them attentively. Alicia continued, simply put, from now on, we'll create departments. We'll add a sales and management department. The sales department will be responsible for products, pricing, points of sale, and promotions, she explained, and the management department will be responsible for personnel management and accounting. An employee asked anxiously, how do you plan to divide the staff? Alicia pondered the question for a moment. How about rotating? She suggested. We'll assign 2 people to management, 2 to sales, and then rotate everyone through the appropriate department. The employees' faces relaxed into smiles. Rotation sounds good, one said. Until now, we've only done what we were told, but this way we can figure out which department we are best suited for. Another asked. So who will be in charge of accounting? A third employee raised their hand. Me. Alicia smiled. Please continue your work for now. We'll talk privately later. The employee who had volunteered for accounting looked worried. Is something wrong? They stammered. Picking up the documents, Alicia said, to be honest, these documents are written in various ways, making them difficult to read. I think we should change them. The employee looked downcast. I apologize, they mumbled. Alicia smiled reassuringly. No need to apologize. There are parts you wrote very clearly, but there's no system, so that's why I said that. Her expression cheerful, she continued, everyone will need a lot of help in setting up and running this new system. Then, with a bright smile, she added, I hope everyone can work well together. The employee smiled and replied in unison, yes, we'll do our best. The scene shifted to a man's shoes. With a cheerful expression, he greeted Alicia. I'll come back later. Alicia saw him off and closed the door. She walked heavily across the floor and collapsed exhaustedly into a chair, the long day finally catching up to her. Looking at the late afternoon sky, she thought, time has flown by these past few days. She stretched, tried to shake off her fatigue. However, a noticeable sadness crept into Alicia's eyes. She recalled her earlier conversation with the employees. She had said cheerfully, "Thank you for everyone's wonderful ideas. We'll end the meeting here." However, before she could fully conclude, one employee had spoken up, a sad expression on their face. "Miss Hamden," they had begun, "even though I was promoted to manager, I still worked like a regular sales employee." He clenched his trembling hands. "But now we are able to share our own opinions," he continued. "Once again, I realize how enjoyable it is to work together, and I really want to work hard." Another employee added, "That's right. Even though we have to readjust everything, I think we are heading in the right direction." Others chimed in, "We promise to improve." Alicia smiled. "Thank you for your enthusiasm," she said. "You all know that I'm also starting to take over the shop, right? Please review the documents and share your opinions. I welcome them." The employees replied in unison, "Yes." As the flashback ended, a bright smile spread across Alicia's face. With so many competent employees, she thought happily, "I think I can do this." Time passed, and the scene shifted to nighttime. Alicia entered cheerfully. "Nettie, I'm home." Nettie stopped her embroidery and replied cheerfully, "Welcome back, Mississippi." She walked over to Alicia. "You met with GN's employees this morning, right?" she asked. "It must have been tough." "I'm happy they seem like good people," Alicia replied. Nettie smiled. "That's fortunate. I was wondering what the personalities of the people working there would be like." Alicia sat down on a chair, a thoughtful look on her face. "How's the shop been lately?" she asked. Nettie smiled. "Our shop has more customers," she replied, "but Zealand and AGI are doing a great job serving them, so everything is going well." Alicia smiled. "Thank you," she said. "Thanks to you, I've been able to focus on the merger." Nettie smiled back. "I'm confident in supporting you now, miss," she said. "So please trust me." Alicia chuckled. "I feel like I've been taken care of too much by you." Seeing Alicia's cheerful laughter, Nettie happily laughed along. However, Alicia's attention was caught by something, and she stared blankly for a moment. It was the embroidery Nettie was working on. "Your embroidery skills have improved," she said. "Those flowers look beautiful." Nettie beamed. "Thank you, Mississippi. I think it's all thanks to constant practice. Next time, I'll try embroidering a whole flower garden." Alicia smiled. "When it's finished," she replied, "let's display it in the mansion." Then, with a tired sigh, she touched her shoulder. Nettie looked at her with concern. "You have a sore shoulder, miss?" she asked, her expression worried. She approached Alicia with a cheerful face. "Let me massage your shoulders," she offered. Alicia turned. "Nettie," she said, "you're not my maid anymore." Nettie smiled. "Even though I'm not a maid," she said, "I can still massage your shoulders." She began to massage Alicia's shoulders, easing her fatigue. "You're tired today, miss, so I want to help you feel comfortable," Nettie said. "Besides, it's all I can do," she added. Alicia smiled. "Thank you, Nettie." Nettie whispered close to her ear. "Of course, as an employee, I also want to flatter you." "Mississippi." Alicia laughed. "If you keep flattering me like this," she said, "I won't refuse." Nettie replied, "Then you have to pay me overtime." Alicia chuckled. "You're quick to catch on to the concept of overtime, aren't you?" They both laughed, the atmosphere becoming cheerful. This continued for a while. With a gentle expression, Alicia said, "I wish every day could be like this." Nettie asked, surprised, "What do you mean, miss?" Alicia replied, "I wonder if I deserve this happiness." She anxiously clasped her hands. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately," she said. Nettie's expression darkened with worry. "Please forgive me, miss," she said. Nettie put her arms around Alicia's neck. She gave her a warm hug, like family. "I don't think everything that's happened is simply due to luck," Nettie continued. "Of course, there might be some luck involved, but you've done your best, miss, and it's gradually becoming complete." Alicia said sadly, "But it could all crumble at any moment." Nettie squeezed Alicia tighter. "You've persevered through all the hardships you've faced," she said. "And so what if you fail? I'm here by your side. We can rebuild everything together." Alicia smiled, touched by her words. "You're right," she beamed. "I can overcome any hardship, and even if I fail, it's okay because I have you." Nettie looked aside. "I'll get married if I find a good person," she said. "And no matter how much you love me, miss, you have to let me go." Alicia chuckled. "I know you'll marry someone wonderful," she replied. The atmosphere around them became cheerful again. The next day arrived. Alicia held out an envelope. "Here you go, Nettie," she said. Nettie asked curiously, "What is this?" Alicia winked and said with a smile, "It's your paycheck." Nettie responded thoughtfully, "Thank you." Alicia smiled, thinking in my past life I used to eagerly await payday, and now I'm in the position of giving paychecks. It feels good to give. Congratulations, she continued aloud. Nettie, you've worked so hard, so added a little extra to your salary compared to last month. Nettie stammered, "Miss," with a worried expression, she said, "Do we really need to do this?" "I don't know." Alicia paused for a moment. Then she said cheerfully, "You deserve fair compensation for what you've done, no matter how close our relationship is." Nettie smiled and asked, "So AGI and Zealand will also receive this, right?" Alicia picked up 2 more envelopes. "Of course," she replied. "And I'll add a bonus too," she thought, a gentle smile gracing her lips. "I wonder how they'll react." She glanced at the clock behind her. "It's time to go," she said to Nettie. "We'll be late." Nettie smiled and replied, "Yes." They left the room. The scene shifted to the front of the Livibio shop. Everything was beautifully decorated and regularly cleaned. The jewelry on display sparkled brightly. AGI and Zealand stared in bewildered surprise at the envelopes they received. Alicia wondered anxiously, "Is something wrong?" Zealand asked with a confused look. "Miss, are you sure you calculated the wages correctly?" "Why? Is there a problem?" Alicia asked. The 2 of them nervously stammered. "This amount is double the salary we received last month." Alicia smiled. "That's right," she said. "I'll explain." She placed her hand on a piece of paper. "This is your base salary," she explained, "but since this month's revenue is higher than last month's, I added a certain percentage to your salaries." The scene shifted to the outside where everyone, in surprise, asked, "A picnic?" Alicia replied, "That's right. We've all been working hard, and closing for a few days will allow everyone a rest. I want to have a picnic one of those days." Lumais, who had appeared unnoticed, looked at her in surprise. He smiled and said, "Let me join you." Alicia asked in surprise, "What? You want to go on a picnic too?" He responded with a slight blush, "You and everyone have worked hard, so as a business partner, I also want to help in some way." Alicia replied, "I can prepare the picnic for everyone. You're so busy, and I don't want to bother you." Lumai smiled. "It's no bother," he said. "If you need anything, just let me know." Alicia smiled. "Thank you, Duke Lumais," she said. Lumais set down his teacup. "I have a cottage," he said. "It's lovely there in the summer." With an expectant look, he continued, "And I hope you can spend some time there with me." Seeing her concern, Lumais quickly explained, "I didn't mean it like that. I just thought since you seem to draw inspiration for jewelry from nature, it would be very helpful for you." Alicia's eyes brightened. "Then can I invite Benson along?" she asked. "Going on a jewelry design expedition would be amazing," she exclaimed. Lumais stared at her blankly. Flustered, Alicia smiled and continued, "I think Benson would really like your idea." She smiled cheerfully. Lumais, with a confused look, thought, "So it's still too early to invite Miss Alicia on a date." With a thoughtful expression, he replied, "Of course." Alicia said, "Thank you. I think Benson will really like this idea." Lumai smiled, unsure of what to say next. "So how successful has the merger been so far?" he asked. Alicia replied, "All right, I'm planning to establish new store policies next week." She opened her bag and searched for the documents. She placed the documents on the table. "I've compiled all the materials for you, since you were a supporter of Livibio," she said. Lumai said in surprise, "You prepared this even before I asked you." "Very thorough. I'll look over it carefully." Alicia laughed and replied, "Of course. If you have any questions, just ask me." They continued their cheerful conversation. Time passed, and the scene shifted to early evening. Alicia stopped walking and, pointing in one direction, said, "I'll go this way, as I need to return to the shop." Lumais asked in surprise the shop. He pulled out his pocket watch. "Isn't the shop closed at this hour?" Alicia smiled and replied, "Yes, but there's something I need to do when no one's there." Lumais looked at her with curiosity. "Then I'll excuse myself," she said. "I'll be going." Before she could finish, he interrupted, "It's late. I'll take you there." Alicia smiled. "It's still light out," she said. "It's all right," Lumai said thoughtfully. "Even so," before he could finish, she said, "Goodbye, Duke." He replied, "Take care." She turned and left. Lumais watched her walk away with a smile. He thought back to Alicia's earlier words. She had cheerfully said, "Can I invite Benson along?" With a hopeful look, he thought, "I wish you would talk about me with that same joy." The scene shifted to the street. Alicia stood in front of the Livibio shop. She gently pushed the door open. A faint light emanated from within the shop. Alicia stretched, relieving her fatigue. With a bright face, she said, "All right, let's get started." Looking at the jewelry, she thought, "The reason I came to the shop after everyone left is because I wanted to choose some jewelry for each employee. Every day, the number of customers keeps increasing. It must be difficult for them. They've been working hard without complaint, so I want to give them a small gift." Zealand would suit a warm yellow, she said. Next is AGI. A blue necklace, I think, would suit him. She paused and thought. Looking intently at the ruby ring on her finger, she said, "And another ring for Nettie. She likes rubies." After making her selections, she placed them in a gift box. With an expectant smile, she said, "I hope everyone likes my small gifts." Her eyes twinkled. Looking up at the moon, she whispered, "Surprise them." The scene shifted to the moonlit street. Alicia walked happily, holding something in her hand. Suddenly, she encountered something that made her gasp. An alarm. Someone was standing before her, but it was too dark to see. Frightened, she wondered, "Who is that?" She started to back away. The moonlight shifted, revealing the person's identity. It was AGI. Confused, she asked, "What are you doing here at this hour?" AGI nervously replied, "I wanted to give you this." Alicia stared at him in surprise. Looking at the flower, she asked, "Are you giving me a flower?" AGI blushed and remained silent. Alicia stared at him for a moment. She stammered, "Why?" AGI replied, "You've been very generous to me, so I wanted to express my gratitude." He offered her the flower and continued, "I used your hair color as inspiration for this flower." Alicia reached out her hand. She accepted the flower and smiled. "Thank you, AGI," she said. "It's beautiful and smells wonderful," she added. AGI blushed and didn't reply. Alicia pulled out a gift box. "Oh," she said, "I have a gift for you too." AGI asked, "A gift for me?" He reached out and accepted the gift from Alicia. With a grateful expression, he said, "Thank you." Alicia asked, "You know about the picnic tomorrow with everyone, right?" She walked towards her house, cheerfully saying, "Then I'll see you tomorrow." AGI watched her enter the house without replying. Time passed, and the scene shifted to the picnic inside the mansion. Nettie asked, "Are you ready?" Miss Alicia appeared, wearing a beautiful blue dress.